Hello, I'm Arthur Reed. Welcome to the World War II History Channel, where we explore the pivotal moments and untold stories of the greatest generation. Long before the steel roared, there was only the quiet, trembling scratch of a pencil in the dark. Welcome, dear listener, to the very beginning. Close your eyes, and let us travel back to a time before the mud, before the thunder, and before the endless fields of winter. Let us step into the quiet sanctuary of the drafting room. The hour is impossibly late. The world outside is heavy with the breath of an approaching storm, but in here, there is only the warm, solitary glow of a desk lamp, casting long, soft shadows across vast sheets of pale paper. Can you smell it? The dry, comforting scent of graphite. The faint, sweet smell of eraser shavings, brushed gently onto the wooden floor like fresh snow. And the coffee, grown cold in a tin cup, forgotten in the deep, consuming quiet of creation. We often think of machines of war as things born of iron and fire, forged in the deafening heart of factories. But their true birth is so much softer. They begin as a fragile idea, held in the tired minds of ordinary men. Men who rub their exhausted eyes, who massage their aching hands, and who carry a terrible, quiet burden in their chests. Because when an engineer leans over his drafting table in the dead of night, he is not merely drawing lines and angles. He is drawing a shelter. He is drawing a metal home for boys he has never met. Somewhere in the deep, freezing embrace of the Soviet winter, the wind howls against a frosted window pane. It is bitter outside, the kind of cold that sinks into the bones and makes the very trees shiver. But inside a small, dimly lit room, a man named Mikhail sits wrapped in a heavy wool coat, a scarf pulled tight around his neck. His hands are numb, his fingers stained with dark lead, but they do not stop moving. He is dreaming up a machine that will eventually be known to the world as the T-34. But tonight, it has no name. It is only a desperate hope sketched on paper. Mikhail doesn't think about historical legacies or grand strategies. He thinks about the young men from the farms and the factory towns who will one day sit inside the hull he is currently drawing. He curves the line of the armor, sweeping his pencil in a gentle, sloping arc. The military men talk about deflecting kinetic energy, but Mikhail thinks only of turning away harm. He draws that slope so a shell might glance off, so a mother might see her son walk through her door again. The pressure upon him is immense, an invisible weight pressing down on his shoulders from the highest offices of his nation. Yet, in the quiet of this room, his thoughts are gentle. An apprentice, barely out of school, steps softly into the room, bringing a single piece of dark bread and a fresh cup of weak, steaming tea. No words are spoken. Just a small, knowing nod between them. A shared moment of quiet resilience. Mikhail breaks the bread, insisting the younger man take half. It is a tiny, beautiful act of grace in a world that is rapidly forgetting what grace looks like. Mikhail eats his portion slowly, staring at the blueprints. He knows he is catching a chill. He knows his chest aches with a deep, rattling cough that will not leave him. He will, in fact, give his life to the cold just to see these drawings become real, driven by a quiet, unyielding love for the unseen faces he is trying to protect. Now, let the winter wind fade, and let us cross a vast, dark ocean. It is a humid, sticky evening in America. The windows of a large brick building are pushed wide open, desperate to catch a breeze that simply refuses to come. The rhythmic hum of a small desk fan is the only sound, oscillating back and forth, rustling the corners of the great vellum sheets spread across a wide oak table. Here, a draftsman sits with his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up past his elbows. A photograph of a smiling woman and a little boy in a sailor suit sits on the corner of his desk, bathed in the amber light of his lamp. He is drawing the interior of a machine that will cross the sea, a machine that will be called the Sherman. He pauses, staring at a small circular opening he has just traced. A hatch. The generals want speed, they want numbers, they want firepower. But this tired draftsman, tapping his pencil against his chin, is thinking about escape. He is thinking about how fast a frightened boy, no older than his own son might be one day, could pull himself out of that dark metal box if the worst were to happen. He carefully erases a line, making the hatch just a fraction wider. Just a little more room. A millimeter of grace. He pulls a piece of personal stationery from his drawer, uncapping a fountain pen to write a letter to his wife. His handwriting is elegant, a stark contrast to the rigid geometry of the tank parts. "My dearest," he writes, the nib scratching softly against the paper. "The nights are long here, and the crickets are the only company I keep. I am drawing heavy things these days. Things made of steel and purpose. But every time I draw a seat, I imagine someone's child sitting in it. I try to make it as comfortable as cold steel can be. I try to build them a safe harbor in the storm that is coming. I miss you. I miss the quiet of our porch. Kiss the baby for me. I hope to be home when the leaves turn." He folds the letter, tucking it away, and returns to the blueprint. In his heart, he is not building a weapon. He is building a lifeboat. There is a profound, almost sacred secrecy to these late nights. Both Mikhail in the freezing snows of the East and the weary American in the humid summer night operate in a world of locked doors, classified files, and whispered conversations. They hold the future of the world in the graphite of their pencils, hidden entirely from the public eye. This deep secrecy, these quiet moments locked away from the rest of the world, were the very foundation of the war. And just as these tanks were born in absolute secrecy, hidden away in shadows and locked drafting rooms, there is a whole other layer to this history that remained veiled from the light of day. There are so many quiet, forgotten heroes whose stories were never written in the main history books, whose bravery occurred entirely in the dark. If you find yourself captivated by these hidden spaces of history, by the secret operations and the quiet courage of those who fought from the shadows, I would love to share something special with you. I have put together a free ebook titled The Shadow War: 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. It is a gentle, deep dive into the forgotten facts and the hidden heroes of the war, sent through my peaceful email newsletter. It is completely free, just a gift from one history lover to another. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the warm light of the drafting lamp. The night wears on. The coffee cups are completely empty now. The edges of the paper have become soft from where tired hands have rested upon them for hours. Think of the immense vulnerability of this moment. Before the engines could ever roar, before the tracks could ever bite into the earth of a foreign field, these mighty machines were nothing more than fragile paper. They could be torn by a careless hand. They could be ruined by a spilled cup of water. They were delicate, just like the men who would eventually crew them. The draftsmen finished their work. The pencil is finally set down, coming to rest with a soft, satisfying click against the wood of the desk. The eraser shavings are brushed away one last time. Slowly, carefully, the great sheets of paper are rolled into thick cylinders. The blueprint is complete. The dream has been captured. The sanctuary has been designed. As the sun begins to rise, casting long, pale ribbons of morning light through the windows, it washes over the empty drafting tables. The engineers stand, their joints stiff, their eyes heavy with the deep, peaceful slumber they have earned but cannot yet take. They look out at the dawn. They do not know what the years ahead will bring. They do not know the names of the fields where their creations will rest. But as they turn off their desk lamps, plunging the drafting room back into a quiet, peaceful dawn, they carry a silent prayer in their hearts. A hope that the lines they drew were true. A hope that the steel will hold. A hope that, somehow, the care they put into every gentle curve and widened hatch will be enough to bring someone's son safely back home. Rest now, dear listener. The blueprints are drawn. The morning has come. The shadows on the drafting table are fading into the light. And the story of the men who will live inside these steel walls is only just beginning to unfold. The snow did not fall, it simply appeared, a quiet white shroud settling over a world of shivering steel. Welcome back, dear listener. Draw your blankets a little closer tonight. Let us leave the warm, softly lit rooms of the draftsman behind, and step together into the vast, silent expanse of the East. The dates fade away here. The names of the fields and the forests no longer matter. There is only the wind, and the endless, aching white of a winter so profound it feels as though the world itself has fallen into a deep, frozen slumber. Imagine a cold so sharp it steals the breath right from your lungs before you can even speak. A frost that turns the very air into a haze of sparkling diamonds. In this endless ocean of snow, there sits a solitary island of iron. The T-34. From the outside, it looks like a sleeping beast, blanketed in a thick layer of frost, its wide tracks frozen solid to the unforgiving earth. But step closer. Lean your ear against the freezing metal hull. Inside this armored shell, there is a fragile, beating heart. Down in the dim, cramped belly of the machine, 4 men are huddled together in the near-total darkness. They are young, though their eyes hold the heavy weariness of old men. The metal walls of their tank, designed to protect them from harm, offer absolutely no protection from the biting cold. The steel acts like an icebox, drawing the warmth from their bodies, chilling them down to the very marrow of their bones. The moisture from their breath has frozen into delicate, crystalline ferns across the ceiling of the turret, glittering faintly in the dim glow of a single, battery-powered bulb. In the driver's seat sits a boy named Pavel. He is perhaps 19, a farm boy from a village he has not seen in what feels like a lifetime. His hands are wrapped in torn wool and dirty rags, but he still shivers violently. He is trying to coax life into the frozen engine. The diesel fuel, the lifeblood of their home, has turned to a thick, stubborn jelly in the night. He pulls the levers, his muscles aching, but the machine is deeply asleep. Beside him sits Ilya, the commander. Ilya is older, a quiet man with kind, tired eyes and a thick beard dusted with frost. He does not yell at the young driver. He does not demand the impossible. Instead, he reaches into his heavy coat and pulls out a battered tin cup. Inside is a tiny measure of precious, hot water he has boiled over a small stove outside. He doesn't drink it. He pours it, slowly and carefully, over the freezing fuel lines, offering the warmth to the machine before himself. Then, Ilya takes Pavel's numb, trembling hands in his own. He rubs them briskly, ignoring the painful cold radiating from the boy's skin. He breathes his own warm breath onto Pavel's frozen knuckles. Slowly, little brother, Ilya whispers, his voice a gentle, soothing rumble in the tiny space. The metal is just sleeping. We must wake it gently. It will carry us. Just be patient. This is the quiet heroism of the winter. It is not found in grand charges or booming guns. It is found in the simple, profound act of giving your own warmth to another. It is found in the way these men lean their shoulders against one another, pooling their meager body heat, creating a tiny sanctuary of life in a landscape of white death. Above them, in the turret, a third crewmate is using this quiet moment to write a letter. He rests a crumpled piece of paper against his knee, holding a stub of a pencil with stiff fingers. He writes to his mother. He does not write about the fear, or the aching cold, or the vast, terrifying emptiness of the steppe. He lies, beautifully and completely. He tells her that he is warm. He tells her that they have a good stove, and plenty of thick blankets, and that the commander is taking good care of them. He writes about the beauty of the snow falling on the birch trees, painting a picture of a peaceful winter landscape to spare her gentle heart from worry. At the bottom of the page, he draws a small, clumsy sketch of a sunflower. It is a quiet promise of a spring he desperately hopes to see, a tiny beacon of love folded into an envelope, waiting to travel thousands of miles back home. The reality of this winter, of this freezing, agonizing struggle just to survive the night, is something history books often sanitize. They speak of sweeping movements and grand strategies, but they often blur the true, harsh face of the human struggle in the snow. The reality of those frostbitten faces, the exhausted eyes, and the landscape stripped of all pretense is deeply raw. Because I want to share the deepest, most authentic history with you, I have put together a special collection on Gumroad. It contains unseen, raw images and unedited videos from the war, the real, unfiltered moments of life on the Eastern Front that are simply too harsh, too real, and too restricted to show on this platform. It is a way to look these history makers in the eyes and witness their true, uncensored endurance. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet dark of the tank, where the cold night still holds its grip. Pavel tries the starter again. The engine groans, a deep, metallic complaint that echoes in the cramped space. And then, a cough. A sputter. A thick plume of dark exhaust erupts from the rear of the tank, staining the pure white snow outside. The engine catches. It settles into a steady, rhythmic thrumming that shakes the floor plates beneath their boots. To these four men, it is the most beautiful, comforting sound in the entire world. It is the sound of life. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the immense heat of the massive engine begins to bleed through the rear firewall into the crew compartment. It is not much, it will never truly be warm inside this iron box, but it takes the bitter edge off the air. The delicate frost ferns on the ceiling begin to weep tiny drops of water. Ilya reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, foil-wrapped treasure. It is a piece of hard chocolate, saved for weeks, perhaps months. He carefully breaks it into 4 uneven pieces, pressing a small chunk into the palm of each of his crewmates. No words are spoken. They simply let the chocolate melt on their tongues, savoring the sudden, sharp burst of sweetness in a world that has tasted only of metal and ice. They lean their heads back against the steel walls. The vibrations of the engine rock them gently, a soothing lullaby of heavy machinery. They close their eyes. For now, they are safe. For now, they are together. The snow will continue to fall outside, burying the tracks, blanketing the world in silence, but inside, the iron heart beats on. Rest now, dear listener. The engine is humming. The cold is kept at bay. The long winter night continues, but there is warmth to be found if you know where to look. Let the gentle rumble carry you away into a peaceful, quiet sleep. Before a machine can ever roll into the dawn, it must first be dreamed into existence by 1,000 tired, careful hands. Welcome back, dear listener. Draw the blankets up to your chin, let the tensions of your day slip away into the shadows, and listen to the quiet rhythm of a world slowly waking up. Tonight, we leave the frozen, endless white of the eastern steppes. We cross the vast, dark, rolling waves of the ocean, flying silently through the night sky, until we arrive on a different shore. Here, there is no snow covering the earth, and no thunder of artillery shaking the trees. Here, the night is wrapped in the quiet, humid embrace of a great American city sleeping under a blanket of stars. But not everyone is asleep. Look down at the streets below. The street lamps cast pools of soft, amber light onto the empty pavement. In the quiet hours of the early morning, long before the sun has even thought about rising, you can hear the gentle, rhythmic scuffing of footsteps. People are leaving their warm homes, stepping out onto their porches, pulling their coats tight against the chill of the morning dew. They carry small paper bags holding simple lunches, a wax paper-wrapped sandwich, an apple, a small slice of pie baked the night before. They are walking toward the horizon, where a sprawling brick building hums with a steady, low vibration. This is the arsenal of awakening. But do not picture a place of harsh, deafening noise or blinding, chaotic light. Think of it, instead, as a grand, echoing cathedral of purpose. As you step through the heavy wooden doors, the air changes. It is warm here, smelling faintly of sweet machine oil, roasted coffee, and the sharp, clean scent of ozone. The factory floor is vast, stretching out like a great cavern, but it is beautifully lit. Thousands of tiny, golden sparks fall gently from the upper rafters like slow-motion rain, drifting down from the welding torches above. They illuminate the faces of the people working below, casting a warm, flickering glow over the immense, curving sheets of raw steel. These are not soldiers. These are mothers, grandfathers, sisters, and neighbors. They wear heavy canvas aprons and thick leather gloves that have grown soft and worn in the palms. They are ordinary people, pulled from the quiet rhythms of their civilian lives, standing side by side in the dim light to build the machine that will soon cross the sea, the Sherman. In the center of this softly humming cavern stands a young woman named Eleanor. Her hair is tied back with a faded blue scarf, tucked carefully out of the way. Her face is smudged with a thin layer of soot, but her eyes are bright, focused, and profoundly gentle. She holds a heavy welding torch in her right hand, but she handles it as delicately as a painter holding a brush. She is joining the thick steel plates of a tank's hull. The blue flame hisses softly, a steady, whispered breath of fire that melts the iron, weaving the separate pieces together into one solid, unbroken shell. Eleanor does not see just a piece of metal. She sees a fortress. She knows, with a quiet, heavy certainty in her heart, that 5 young boys will one day sit behind the very seam she is welding right now. She thinks of her own husband, who kissed her cheek on a rainy morning months ago and boarded a train heading east. She has not heard from him in weeks. The silence in her mailbox is a heavy, aching thing. And so, as she guides the blue flame along the edge of the steel, she pours all of her unspoken love, all of her worry, and all of her hope into the metal. She welds with a fierce, quiet devotion, ensuring there are no gaps, no weaknesses, no flaws. When she finishes the seam, she turns off her torch. The metal cools, shifting from a bright, angry cherry red to a deep, calming gray. Before anyone can see, she takes a small piece of white chalk from her pocket and writes her husband's initials on the inside of the hull. It is a tiny, secret prayer. A little whisper of love, sealed inside the dark iron, sent out into the unknown world to protect whoever might find themselves inside. Down the line, the atmosphere is incredibly peaceful. There is a soothing rhythm to the work. The gentle clinking of wrenches, the soft whir of electric motors, the rhythmic tapping of small hammers fitting pieces into perfect alignment. It is a symphony of care. When the brake whistle blows, a soft, distant tone that echoes gently through the rafters, the machines are turned off. A deep, comfortable silence settles over the floor. The workers gather in small circles, sitting on wooden crates or resting against the heavy rubber tracks of the half-finished tanks. They unscrew the tops of their thermoses, pouring hot, black coffee into metal cups. The steam rises softly into the cool air. They share everything in these quiet moments. An older woman offers half of her sandwich to a young boy sweeping the floors. A man with graying temples pulls a crumpled, much-read letter from his front pocket and reads a funny paragraph from his son overseas, making the group smile warmly in the dim light. They are a family, forged not by blood, but by a shared, quiet dedication. They stand on their feet for hours on end, their backs aching, their hands calloused, simply because they believe in the boys who will drive these machines. They are pouring their very souls into the steel so that others might live. It is deeply moving to think about the massive amount of love, time, and quiet dedication those workers poured into the metal, long before the history books were ever written. They spent countless hours in the dim light, working tirelessly so that the world might have a tomorrow. Telling their stories today, finding these small, human moments hidden beneath the grand sweep of history, also requires a massive amount of dedication, late nights, and deep, quiet research. If you find comfort and value in these stories, and if you would like to support the hundreds of hours it takes to keep this history alive, I would be incredibly grateful if you might consider leaving a small tip in my Ko-Fi tip jar. Even something as small as $1 goes a remarkably long way in helping me uncover more of these beautiful, forgotten lives to share with you. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the warm, softly glowing factory floor. The break is over, and the gentle hum of production begins again. At the very end of the great assembly line, the tanks are nearly finished. They stand tall and silent, painted a deep, matte olive green that seems to absorb the light around them. Here, an older man named Arthur slowly walks around the finished machine. He is an inspector. He does not carry a clipboard or a measuring tape. He carries only the deep, intuitive knowledge of a man who has worked with his hands for a lifetime. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, running his bare, wrinkled hand gently over the smooth curve of the turret, checking for any rough edges, any tiny imperfections in the steel. Arthur's own son is too young to go overseas, but he looks at this tank and imagines 5 other Father's sons climbing inside. He climbs slowly up the front of the hull, his boots soft against the metal, and slips down into the driver's seat. It is dark and quiet inside. The smell of fresh paint and new leather fills the small space. Arthur reaches out and touches the dials on the dashboard. He polishes the glass of a gauge with the soft hem of his shirt, making sure it is perfectly clear. He tests the tension of the steering levers, nodding to himself in the dark. He wants it to be perfect. It has to be perfect. He reaches up and gently pats the thick steel roof above his head, a gesture of quiet blessing, like a grandfather tucking a child into bed. Keep them safe, he whispers into the dark, empty tank. You carry them well, and you bring them back. The shift finally ends. The heavy wooden doors open, letting the cool, pale light of the morning drift inside. The workers file out, their shoulders tired but their hearts light, walking back into the awakening city as the sun crests the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of peach and lavender. Behind them, in the vast, quiet cathedral of the factory, the finished machines sit in perfect, silent rows. They are no longer just pieces of metal, wire, and glass. They have been imbued with the prayers of wives, the quiet hopes of grandfathers, and the gentle, tireless dedication of thousands of ordinary hands. They are ready to begin their long journey. Rest your head now, dear listener. The machines are built. The workers are finally resting in their own warm beds. The great arsenal is quiet, holding its breath in the morning light. Close your eyes, let the soft, rhythmic hum of the factory fade away into the distance, and let sleep carry you gently into a peaceful, quiet dawn. The wind does not whisper here, it breathes, a hot and heavy sigh across an ocean of endless gold. Welcome back, dear listener. Settle in, let the weight of your day soften, and allow my voice to carry you far away from the familiar. Tonight, we are leaving the shadowed, brick-lined avenues of the sleeping factories. We are crossing the vast, rolling expanse of the sea, leaving behind the cool breezes of home, to arrive on a strange, sun-baked shore. We find ourselves in the sprawling, majestic, and utterly unforgiving deserts of North Africa. Imagine, if you will, a landscape that looks as though it belongs to another planet entirely. There are no green hills here, no familiar maples or oak trees to offer a canopy of shade. There is only the sky, a vast, unblinking dome of piercing blue, and the earth beneath, a sprawling canvas of blinding, shimmering sand that stretches out until it blurs into the horizon. Into this ancient, silent ocean of dust rolls the Sherman. Freshly painted in dark, matte olive green, the machines look entirely out of place against the pale dunes. They were born in the cool, humid nights of American cities, shaped by men and women in tempered factories, and now they have been dropped into the heart of a furnace. This is their baptism. It is not a baptism of water, but of fire, of heat, and of fine, choking sand that finds its way into every seam, every pocket, and every breath. Step close to the machine, but do not touch the armor. By midday, the heavy steel plates have been baking under the relentless glare of the sun for hours. The metal is so hot it could blister a bare hand in seconds. The air immediately surrounding the tank actually warps and shivers, bending the light in hazy, liquid ripples of heat. The machine is a towering oven, radiating a fierce, suffocating warmth. Now, imagine what it must be like to climb inside. Down in the dim, cramped belly of the tank, the heat is absolute. It is a heavy, physical presence that presses against the chest and makes every movement feel like a monumental effort. Here, a young gunner named Thomas sits in the gloom. He is barely 20 years old, a boy who grew up swimming in the cool, shaded creeks of the American Midwest. Now, his world is reduced to a few square feet of baking steel. His olive drab uniform is soaked through, clinging uncomfortably to his tired shoulders. The air he breathes is thick, tasting of warm machine oil, hot brass, and the ever-present, powdery dust that coats the inside of his mouth. The sweat runs down his forehead, stinging his eyes, cutting pale tracks through the dirt on his cheeks. There is no glory in this specific moment. There are no grand speeches or sweeping maneuvers. There is only the quiet, agonizing endurance of the human body pushed to its limits. Thomas rests his forehead against the padded edge of his periscope, closing his eyes, trying with all his might to summon the memory of a winter snowfall or the sound of ice clinking in a glass of lemonade. But the memories are fragile, easily melted away by the oppressive reality of the metal box. Beside him, the tank commander, a soft-spoken man named Arthur, reaches out. He does not offer a tactical command. He offers salvation. Arthur unhooks a heavy canvas canteen from the wall. The canvas is damp, designed to cool the water inside through evaporation, though in this extreme heat, the effect is terribly slight. He unscrews the cap and gently nudges Thomas's shoulder. Thomas takes the canteen with trembling, dirt-stained hands. He takes a slow sip. The water is tepid, warm as tea, and it carries the unmistakable, bitter tang of the metal tin and the canvas bag. But to Thomas, in this baking, claustrophobic darkness, it is the sweetest, most precious nectar on earth. He swallows, closing his eyes in a moment of pure, profound gratitude. He takes only what he needs, resisting the urge to drain it completely, because he knows Arthur is just as thirsty, just as exhausted. He passes the canteen back, offering a small, silent nod. Arthur nods in return, taking his own careful sip before sealing the cap tightly. This is the true brotherhood of the armor. It is not forged entirely in the noise of combat, but in these painfully quiet hours of shared suffering. It is passing a damp, grimy rag to a friend so they can wipe the stinging sweat from their eyes. It is checking the pale, drawn face of the driver to make sure he hasn't passed out from the heat exhaustion. It is the simple, beautiful act of sharing a warm mouthful of water in a place where water is more valuable than gold. The visual history of this war, particularly in these sun-drenched, harsh environments, is incredibly striking. The faded uniforms, the dust-caked goggles, the deep lines of exhaustion carved into young, sunburned faces. Whether it was the sprawling deserts of North Africa or the sweltering, humid islands of the Pacific Theater, the sensory experience of these locations was an enemy all its own. Connecting with this profound visual and sensory history is a powerful way to honor the past. For those who wish to reach out and touch this era, to see the world as these young men saw it, I highly recommend exploring WWII enthusiast items on Amazon. Whether it is finding a piece of authentic physical memorabilia that carries the weight of history, or immersing yourself in the striking visual storytelling of a film like the movie Midway on Prime, these resources help keep the memory of their endurance vividly alive. It builds a bridge between our comfortable present and their unimaginable reality. Make it a quiet evening of reflection, honoring the sheer human will it took to survive such alien shores. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet, baking dunes, just as the day begins to break. The sun, having punished the earth for endless hours, finally begins its slow descent. It touches the horizon, swelling into a massive, burning sphere of deep crimson and bruised purple. The light softens, turning the harsh, blinding gold of the sand into rich, velvety shades of rust, peach, and lavender. As the sun slips away, an astonishing transformation occurs. The heat does not simply fade, it plummets. In the desert, the sun is the only source of warmth, and without it, the air turns sharply, shockingly cold. The crew of the Sherman climbs out of their metal oven, pushing the heavy hatches open with exhausted sighs. They stand on the engine deck, their boots covered in fine, white dust. The sudden chill raises goosebumps on their damp skin. They reach down into the tank, pulling out heavy wool sweaters and thick jackets, garments that seemed like a cruel joke just a few hours ago, but are now deeply, profoundly necessary. The engine is cut. The sudden absence of the low, rumbling vibration leaves a silence so pure and vast it almost rings in the ears. The desert night is incredibly still. As the metal of the massive machine begins to cool in the freezing night air, it speaks. It makes soft, rhythmic ticking and pinging sounds, the steel contracting as the temperature drops. To the boy sitting on the hull, it sounds like the tank is settling into sleep, sighing after a long, exhausting day. Arthur sits cross-legged on the turret, wrapped tightly in a rough wool blanket. He looks up. Away from the lights of any city, the desert sky is a breathtaking revelation. It is an ocean of deep, impenetrable black, scattered with millions of brilliant, icy stars. They look so close, so perfectly clear, that Arthur feels as though he could simply reach up and brush them with his fingertips. He pulls a small, worn leather wallet from his breast pocket. He does not need a flashlight, the starlight is bright enough. From the wallet, he slides a photograph of a porch in a small town he hasn't seen in 2 years. He traces the edge of the paper with his thumb, feeling the soft, frayed corner. The overwhelming vastness of the desert makes him feel incredibly small, but the image in his hand tethers him to the earth. It is his anchor in a sea of sand. Around him, the rest of the crew is settling down to sleep. They do not sleep inside the tank, it is too cramped, and the smell of oil is too strong. Instead, they unroll thin canvas cots or simply lay their sleeping bags directly onto the soft, cooling sand beneath the tracks of the Sherman. The great metal hull acts as a windbreak, a silent, iron guardian watching over them while they dream. Thomas lies on his back, his hands tucked behind his head, staring up at the endless spray of stars. The lingering taste of the warm water is still on his tongue. The agonizing heat of the day is already beginning to feel like a distant memory, replaced by the biting, clean cold of the night air. He pulls his sleeping bag up to his chin, shivering slightly, but feeling a deep, heavy peace wash over him. They have survived their first days in the sand. They have endured the oven. They have learned to rely on the quiet strength of the man sitting next to them. The desert is vast, and their journey has only just begun. But for tonight, the war is silent. There is only the soft ticking of the cooling armor, the gentle breathing of sleeping boys, and the brilliant, watchful eyes of a billion stars. Rest now, dear listener. The heat has passed. The night is cool and quiet. Let the stillness of the desert wrap around you, soft and peaceful, and drift away into a deep, untroubled sleep. The earth did not merely soften, it sighed, and in its waking, turned the world into a boundless, heavy ocean of dark and clinging sorrow. Welcome back, dear listener. Settle in, draw your blankets close, and let the gentle, steady rhythm of my voice carry you away from the cares of your day. Tonight, we leave the frozen, crystalline silence of the deep winter. The seasons have turned, as they always do, but here in the vast, open expanses of the East, the coming of the thaw does not bring a gentle spring. It brings the Rasputitsa, the time without roads. Imagine a landscape where the very ground beneath you betrays its promise of solidity. The snow melts, the rains fall, and the earth drinks until it can hold no more. What was once a firm, rolling step becomes an endless, sweeping tide of deep, brown mire. It is a mud so thick, so absolute, that it feels less like soil and more like a living, breathing entity. It pulls at the boots of tired men, it swallows wagon wheels, and it reaches up to drag at the iron bellies of the great machines. Through this heavy, fragrant sea of wet earth rolls the T-34. From a distance, the machine looks like a weary, battered ship navigating a slow, agonizing storm. Its white steel tracks, designed by thoughtful men in warm rooms, are its only saving grace. They paddle through the slop, turning and churning, throwing thick arcs of black mud high into the air. But even with these wide, forgiving tracks, the journey is a silent, grueling test of the human spirit. Down in the dark, damp belly of the tank, the air is heavy. It smells of wet wool, diesel fumes, and the rich, unavoidable scent of decaying roots and soaked earth. The driver, a quiet young man named Lev, sits hunched over his steering levers. His hands are raw, blistered from the sheer physical effort of forcing the immense weight of the machine through the sucking mire. Every mile gained is a victory won by the aching muscles in his shoulders and the bruised palms of his hands. His boots are completely soaked through. The icy water of the thaw has seeped past the leather, chilling his toes, making them numb and heavy. But Lev does not complain. He simply blinks the exhaustion from his eyes, listening to the deep, strained roar of the engine behind him. He feels the vibrations of the massive diesel heart, coaxing it, pleading with it softly to keep pulling, to keep moving forward through the endless brown sea. But eventually, the earth wins a small victory. The tank crests a slight rise, the tracks spin, struggling to find purchase in the slick clay, and slowly, with a heavy, sinking groan, the machine slides sideways into a deep, waterlogged trench. The tracks churn helplessly for a moment, churning water and mud, before Lev cuts the engine. A profound, heavy silence settles over the landscape. The rain falls in a soft, whispering drizzle, pattering gently against the steel roof. They are stuck. In any other place, at any other time, this might be a moment of panic. But here, in the quiet endurance of the mud, it is simply another chore to be done. The heavy metal hatch creaks open, and the commander, an older man named Grigory, pulls himself up into the gray light. He looks out over the endless sea of mud, his face calm, the rain dripping from the brim of his padded helmet. He doesn't shout. He simply turns and extends a hand down into the darkness, helping Lev and the others climb out onto the slippery, mud-caked hull. What follows is a beautiful, agonizing ballet of quiet resilience. The crew wades down into the freezing slop. The mud reaches almost to their knees, an icy, suffocating embrace. They carry a heavy, thick wooden beam, an unditching log, strapped to the side of the tank for exactly this purpose. They do not speak much. Words require energy they do not have. Instead, they communicate through quiet grunts, through the meeting of tired eyes, through the shared, synchronized heave of their exhausted bodies. They sink their numb hands into the freezing mud, chaining the heavy log to the front of the tracks. Grigory stands shoulder to shoulder with his youngest loader, their breath pluming in the damp air, pulling on the heavy iron chain until their knuckles turn white. It takes hours. It is wet, miserable, bone-chilling work. But they do it together. When Lev climbs back inside and gently engages the clutch, the track catches the log, pulling the massive machine up and out of its muddy prison with a heavy, satisfying squelch. When the tank is finally on somewhat firmer ground, they rest. They sit huddled together on the rear engine deck, leaning against the hot metal grates, letting the radiant heat of the sleeping engine seep through their soaked uniforms. They are covered from head to toe in black mud. They look like statues molded from the earth itself. Grigory reaches into the inner pocket of his heavy coat, the only dry place left on his body. He pulls out a small, tin box. Inside, carefully wrapped in a scrap of oiled cloth, are a few dry cigarettes. He places one between his lips, striking a match that flares briefly, illuminating his tired, deeply lined face. He takes a long, slow drag, and then gently passes the cigarette to Lev. They pass it around the circle, a silent communion of warmth and shared survival. Lev closes his eyes as he takes his turn, letting the smoke fill his lungs, finding a tiny, fleeting moment of peace in the center of the vast, muddy nowhere. Grigory then pulls something else from the tin. A small, slightly creased photograph. He holds it carefully by the edges, ensuring his muddy fingers do not stain the image. He leans over, holding it so Lev and the others can see. It is a picture of a wide, cobblestone street in a city far away. The street is beautifully dry. The sun is shining. There is a woman in a light summer dress smiling at the camera. No one says a word. They just look at the dry street, the warm sun, and the smile. They look at a memory of a world that is not made of mud and freezing rain. It is a small, quiet moment of kindness, a shared tether to their humanity, offered by a commander who knows that sometimes a dry memory is the only thing that can warm a shivering soul. It is in these quiet, desperate moments that we find the true heart of the history we study. The history books often gloss over these endless days of mud and physical drain, focusing instead on lines moving across a map or the mechanics of the engines. But if you, like me, feel a deep desire to truly understand these harsh, forgotten realities, to sit with these crews in the quiet moments of their struggle, I invite you to join our growing community of history lovers over on Patreon. There, we share free, deep-dive podcasts and uncensored content that explores these profoundly human stories in ways we simply cannot do here. It is a place for those who want to look beyond the surface and find the heartbeat of the past. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us return now to the quiet engine deck. The gray afternoon begins to fade into a deeper, heavier dusk. The rain stops, and the wind shifts. It carries a new, sharp bite. The temperature is dropping. The deep mud that has trapped and exhausted them all day long is beginning to stiffen. Soon, it will freeze solid, turning the landscape from a soft, clinging trap into a rigid, unforgiving expanse of dark ice. The crew climbs back down through the hatches, sealing themselves away from the biting wind. The inside of the tank is cramped, smelling strongly of their wet clothes, but the heat from the engine block still lingers in the air. In the dim glow of a single, small lamp, Lev pulls a piece of crumpled paper onto his knee. He has a stub of a pencil, its lead dull and gray. He writes a letter to his younger brother. His handwriting is shaky, his fingers still stiff from the cold and the heavy labor of the chains. He does not write about the sinking feeling of the tank sliding into the ditch. He does not write about the agonizing cold of the mud water seeping into his boots. Instead, he writes about the smell of the earth. The ground here smells just like the fields behind our house, he writes, his pencil scratching softly in the quiet darkness. Just like it does right after the heavy spring rains, when we would run out to look for frogs by the creek. I was thinking of that today. I hope the creek is running clear, and I hope you are keeping your shoes clean. We are moving slowly, but we are moving. The engine is warm, and Grigory has shared his tobacco. I am well. Sleep soundly, little brother. He folds the paper, tucking it away safely in his pocket. It is a gentle lie, a poetic reframing of his misery, crafted purely to spare the heart of a child miles away. It is the quiet heroism of everyday love, blooming unseen in the dark, muddy belly of a machine of war. The single lamp is clicked off. The darkness inside the hole is total, a thick, comforting blanket. Outside, the mud turns slowly to stone under the starry, freezing sky. The great iron machine sits perfectly still, a silent guardian in the frozen sea. Rest now, dear listener. The hard work of the day is done. The tracks are free. The mud has hardened into roads of ice that will carry them tomorrow. But for tonight, there is nowhere left to go. There is only the lingering warmth of the engine, the quiet breathing of the sleeping crew, and the deep, peaceful stillness of the winter night. Close your eyes, and let sleep find you, safe and warm. In the deepest hours of the night, the most powerful weapon a soldier holds is not made of iron, but of fragile, softly folded paper. Welcome back, dear listener. Breathe in slowly, and as you exhale, let the heavy burdens of your day simply slip away into the shadows. Let your mind become quiet. Tonight, we find ourselves in the gentle, profound stillness that only comes when the great engines are finally cut. The roaring thunder of the day has faded into a distant memory, replaced by the soft, rhythmic breathing of exhausted men and the quiet ticking of cooling steel. Whether it is a Sherman resting in the damp, mist-shrouded orchards of Western Europe, or a T-34 sitting silently beneath the vast, starry canopy of the eastern steppe, the scene inside these metal giants is beautifully, almost heartbreakingly, the same. When the world outside falls dark, a different kind of light blooms within the hull. Imagine the interior of the Sherman. The 5 men inside have shared their meager rations. They have passed a single canteen back and forth in the dark. 3 of them have already drifted into a heavy, dreamless sleep, their heads resting awkwardly against periscope guards or padded bulkheads. But in the bow, the assistant driver, a young man named William, is wide awake. He reaches into his canvas bag and pulls out a small flashlight. He has carefully taped a piece of red cellophane over the lens, so that when he clicks it on, it casts only the softest, dimmest crimson glow. It is just enough light to see his own hands. And from the pocket over his heart, he gently slips out a few sheets of precious, pale blue stationery. He unscrews the cap of his fountain pen. The air in the tank is thick with the scent of damp wool, old brass, and the sweet, heavy smell of engine grease. But as William smooths the paper over his knee, his mind travels thousands of miles away. He is back on a wide wooden porch in Ohio. He can almost smell the lilac bushes blooming in the twilight. He begins to write. The nib of the pen scratches with a soft, rhythmic whisper against the paper. It is a deeply intimate sound, a tiny heartbeat in the echoing metal chamber. My dearest Mary, he writes, his handwriting neat and careful, despite the cramped space. He pauses, staring at the faint red circle of light. What can he tell her? He cannot tell her about the deafening roar of the cannons that still rings in his ears. He cannot tell her about the terrifying, suffocating heat of the day, or the way his hands shook when the enemy armor appeared on the horizon. Instead, he chooses to protect her. He builds a fortress of gentle words to shield her heart from the harshness of his reality. The weather here has cooled, he writes, the ink flowing smoothly. We are camped near an old apple orchard, and the trees remind me of your father's farm. The boys are all doing well, and my commander is a good, fair man who looks out for us. Please tell me the tomatoes have finally come up in the garden. And give the dog a scratch behind the ears for me. I think of you every time the stars come out. I am safe, my love. Do not worry. He folds the letter carefully, making sure the creases are sharp and perfect. He slides it into a small envelope, sealing his fears, his exhaustion, and his deep, aching loneliness safely away. He offers only his love, a quiet resilience woven into every mundane question about the garden and the dog. These letters were vessels of hidden truths. In the dark, these young men kept their most profound realities locked away, sharing only a shadow of their true experience to keep their loved ones safe. There is a deep, quiet courage in that kind of secrecy. And truly, so much of this war was defined by what was kept hidden in the shadows. Just as these soldiers concealed their private fears beneath brave words, the world around them was shaped by covert movements, silent operations, and histories that were intentionally kept from the light of day. If you find yourself drawn to these hidden spaces of history, to the quiet courage that happened away from the grand battlefields, I have something I would love to share with you. I send out a gentle email newsletter, and when you join, I will send you a free ebook titled The Shadow War: 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. It is a journey into the forgotten facts, the hidden heroes, and the quiet espionage that changed the world while the rest of humanity was looking the other way. It is a gift, just a way for us to explore the unspoken layers of the past together. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us leave the orchard and travel east, where the night is older and the stars are diamond sharp. Inside the freezing belly of the T-34, a single, tiny candle stump burns. It is stuck to the top of a metal ammunition box with a drop of its own melted wax. The flame flickers weakly, casting long, dancing shadows across the curved iron walls. Here, the loader, a broad-shouldered boy named Sergei, sits cross-legged on the floor plates. He does not have fine blue stationery. He has a piece of coarse, brownish paper, carefully torn from a ration box and flattened out with the heel of his hand. He does not have a fountain pen, only a small stub of a pencil, worn down so far he can barely grip it between his thick, calloused fingers. Sergei is writing to his mother. The cold is seeping through his boots, a biting, relentless ache, but as he looks at the blank paper, his heavy features soften. "Mama," he writes, pressing hard so the dull graphite leaves a mark. "We have stopped for the night. The commander says we will rest tomorrow, so you see, I am getting plenty of sleep. The coat you sent is the warmest one in the whole regiment. Even the officers are jealous of it." He smiles softly in the dim, flickering candlelight as he writes the lie. The coat is threadbare, and he is shivering, but he knows the thought of him being warm will help her sleep peacefully in her own bed. "I remember the smell of your bread," he continues, his movements slow and deliberate. "I dream of it sometimes when the engine is humming. Keep the door locked at night, and ask neighbor Ivan to help you with the heavy firewood. I will be home to chop it for you before the next snow falls. I promise." Sergei stops. He stares at the little paper. He knows, deep in his quiet heart, that he might not be able to keep that promise. The road ahead is long, and the dark is full of danger. But he writes it anyway, because hope is the only fuel that truly keeps the machine moving forward. He folds the rough paper into a small, tight square. He does not have an envelope, so he simply tucks it deep into his tunic, pressing it flat against his chest, right over his beating heart. It will stay there, a tiny, paper shield, until the supply trucks finally arrive to take the mail back home. Look closely at these two men, sitting in the dark of their respective machines. They speak different languages, they wear different uniforms, and they sit thousands of miles apart. But in the quiet hours of the night, illuminated by a red lens and a flickering candle, they are exactly the same. They are just boys, reaching out across the terrifying dark, trying to touch the hands of the people they love. They are writing their own histories, not with grand declarations or military strategies, but with quiet whispers of affection, promises of return, and beautiful, protective lies. These pieces of paper carry more weight than the thickest armor plating. They hold the souls of the crew. The candle in the T-34 finally sputters and goes out, sending a tiny ribbon of gray smoke into the cold air. The flashlight in the Sherman is clicked off, plunging the space back into a comforting, velvet blackness. The letters are finished. The connection to home has been made. Now, there is nothing left to do but rest. The men pull their collars up, shifting their weight until they find a small measure of comfort against the steel. The heavy silence of the night wraps around the tanks like a thick, protective blanket. Rest now, dear listener. The letters are safe in their pockets. The fears have been tucked away. The night is peaceful, and the machines are asleep. Let the quiet darkness hold you, let your breathing slow, and drift away into a gentle, untroubled slumber. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting in the tall, golden grass for the world to change. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let your eyes softly close. Let the quiet darkness of your room wrap around you like a familiar, comforting blanket. Release the tension in your hands, soften your jaw, and let my voice carry you far away from the rushing currents of your daily life. Tonight, we are traveling to a place of immense, quiet anticipation. We are leaving the damp, clinging mud of the spring thaw behind, and stepping out into the vast, sweeping ocean of the Russian steppe at the very height of summer. Imagine a landscape so wide and open that the sky feels incredibly close, a brilliant, aching dome of blue that stretches from horizon to horizon. The earth here is covered in a deep, rolling sea of feather grass. As the warm summer breeze touches it, the grass sways and ripples, creating the illusion of green and golden waves flowing across the land. It is a place of profound, ancient beauty. It smells of wild sage, sun-baked soil, and the sweet, dusty fragrance of blooming wildflowers. If you were to stand here alone, listening to the rhythmic, hypnotic chirping of the crickets, you might think you had found the most peaceful place on earth. But beneath the grass, the steppe is hiding a secret. Hidden in the shallow ravines, tucked beneath the shadows of solitary oak trees, and cloaked under woven mats of cut branches and leaves, thousands of iron machines are sleeping. This is the gathering of the T-34s. They have been waiting here for days, perfectly still, holding a collective breath before the greatest clash of steel the world will ever know. But we will not speak of the battle tonight. The true weight of this history does not live in the roaring of the guns. It lives in the quiet, agonizing hours of the wait. Let us climb down into the belly of one of these hidden machines. The heavy steel hatch is propped open just a few inches to let the warm summer air filter into the cramped, shadowed interior. Down here, the world is reduced to a space no larger than a small closet, shared by 4 men. The air is thick, carrying the familiar, heavy scents of diesel fuel, warm canvas, and the nervous sweat of the crew. In the driver's seat sits a young boy named Sasha. He is only 18. His hands rest lightly on the steering levers, but if you look closely in the dim light, you can see that his fingers are trembling. It is a fine, invisible vibration. He is not afraid of the machine, and he is no longer afraid of the harsh living conditions. He is trembling from the sheer, crushing psychological weight of the weight. It is the terrible anticipation of knowing that a storm is coming, but not knowing when the first drop of rain will fall. Sasha stares straight ahead through his small viewing slit. All he can see is a single, thick blade of green grass, swaying gently against the glass. He watches it intently, focusing all of his mind on that one tiny piece of life, trying to anchor himself to the present moment. His heart beats against his ribs like a trapped bird. Beside him, the commander, an older man with graying temples named Nikolai, watches the boy quietly. Nikolai has seen many seasons of this war. He knows that the waiting is the hardest part. It is the time when the mind wanders to dark places, when the silence becomes so loud it rings in the ears. Nikolai does not offer a grand, patriotic speech. He does not tell the boy to be brave. Instead, he reaches deep into the pocket of his faded tunic. His rough fingers search for a moment, and then he pulls out a small, smooth object. He leans over and gently places it into Sasha's trembling hand. Sasha looks down. Resting in his palm is a tiny bird, hand-carved from a piece of pale birch wood. It is simple, but beautifully made, polished to a soft sheen by the constant rubbing of a thumb. "My grandfather carved that for me when I was a little smaller than you," Nikolai whispers, his voice a low, soothing rumble in the dark steel chamber. "I used to hold it when the summer thunderstorms rolled over our village and the lightning frightened me. Keep it in your hand, Sasha. It gives the fingers something to remember. It reminds the hands of the trees and the quiet woods. Sasha wraps his fingers tightly around the little wooden bird. The wood is warm from Nikolai's pocket. It is completely smooth, lacking the harsh, unforgiving angles of the iron tank. It feels incredibly grounding. It feels like a piece of a peaceful world, a world of porch swings and kitchen tables, smuggled right into the heart of the machine. He closes his eyes, takes a slow, deep breath, and the trembling in his hands finally begins to ease. This is the everyday heroism of the steppe. It is the quiet, profound act of an older man sharing a piece of his own fragile comfort to steady the racing heart of a child. Across this vast, sweeping plain, tens of thousands of men are having these exact same, quiet moments. In the shadows of the armor, they are reading worn letters from their mothers. They are sharing a final drop of water from a tin canteen. They are looking up at the perfect blue sky, watching the white clouds drift lazily toward the horizon, and praying silent, wordless prayers. The sheer magnitude of this waiting, the terrifying scale of millions of men holding their breath in the grass, is something that words can only gently brush against. The raw, unfiltered emotion etched into the faces of these crews, the juxtaposition of the beautiful summer day against the cold reality of the steel, is a profoundly heavy truth. It is a reality that is often difficult to fully capture in a spoken story. Because I want you to feel the true depth of this history, to see the unvarnished humanity of these moments, I have put together a special collection on Gumroad. It contains unseen, raw imagery and unedited videos of the Eastern Front, the real faces, the vast landscapes, and the deeply moving, uncensored realities of the war that are simply too restricted to share on this platform. It is a way to look across the distance of time and truly see the men who waited in the grass. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet shadows of the T-34. The long afternoon finally begins to bleed into evening. The fierce heat of the sun softens, and the light turns a rich, liquid gold, casting long, peaceful shadows across the rippling feather grass. The crickets begin their evening song, a gentle, rhythmic hum that seems to vibrate through the very earth itself. Inside the tank, the men have grown completely still. They are lost in their own thoughts, resting in the quiet sanctuary of the metal hull. Sasha's thumb gently strokes the back of the wooden bird. Nikolai leans his head back, his eyes closed, listening to the wind. And then, just as the first pale stars begin to prick through the fading blue of the sky, it happens. Far away, across the rolling hills, a single red signal flare arches gracefully into the twilight. It is beautiful, really. Like a slow, falling star, trailing a thin ribbon of white smoke. No one shouts. There is no sudden, chaotic panic. There is only a collective, synchronized intake of breath. Nikolai opens his eyes. He gives Sasha a single, firm nod. Sasha carefully tucks the little wooden bird securely into his breast pocket, placing it right over his heart. He reaches forward, his hand steady now, and grasps the heavy starter lever. All across the steppe, for miles in every direction, the engines awaken. They do not start with a violent, terrifying crash. They start with a low, deep, subterranean purr. It is a heavy, rhythmic thrumming that builds and builds until the very earth begins to vibrate. It is the roar of the steppe, but from inside the hull, it sounds like a massive, soothing lullaby of heavy machinery. The tank gently rocks side to side as the great diesel heart settles into its steady rhythm. It is a comforting motion, like a cradle made of iron. The tracks creak softly as they prepare to move. The waiting is over. The great machines slowly, almost gently, begin to push forward through the tall grass, their dark shapes illuminated only by the light of the rising moon. They are rolling out of the shadows, carrying the hopes, the fears, and the quiet courage of the men inside them into the unknown night. But you, dear listener, do not need to follow them into the dark. Your waiting is over, too. The day is done. The engines are humming their low, steady song just for you, a blanket of sound to wrap around your weary mind. Let the gentle rocking of the tracks carry you. Let the soft summer wind of the steppe blow away your thoughts. Rest now. Sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, and let the quiet night hold you safe until the morning comes. The world did not end in fire, but in a suffocating wall of endless, ancient green. Welcome back, dear listener. Draw a deep, slow breath, and let the heavy air fill your lungs. Exhale, and let the worries of your day drift away on the gentle breeze. Tonight, we leave the vast, open expanses of the eastern steppe and the baking sands of the desert far behind. We are traveling to a place that is intimately beautiful, yet profoundly terrifying in its quietness. We are crossing into the heart of the French countryside, in the long, warm days following the arrival of summer. Imagine a landscape that looks exactly like a fairy tale. Lush, rolling green hills, dotted with ancient stone farmhouses and quiet apple orchards. But separating these peaceful fields are the hedgerows. The bocage. These are not the small, manicured hedges you might find in a suburban garden. These are massive, ancient walls of earth, some as tall as a house, built by Norman farmers over hundreds and hundreds of years. They are thick embankments of packed dirt, woven through with roots as thick as a man's thigh, and crowned with a dense, impenetrable tangle of oak, ash, hawthorn, and briar. Between these massive walls run narrow, sunken dirt lanes. They are pathways so deep and shadowed that the summer sun barely touches the ground. Down into this dark, green labyrinth rolls the Sherman. This great iron machine was designed for open plains and sweeping maneuvers. It was built to run fast and free under white skies. But here, in the sunken lanes of Normandy, it is trapped. The thick metal tracks grind against the steep earthen walls, crushing delicate ferns and wild ivy. The air down here is utterly still, thick with the smell of damp earth, bruised leaves, and the sharp, metallic tang of hot engine grease. Step inside the dim, stifling belly of the tank. The 5 young men inside are sitting in near total silence. The sweeping grand strategy of the war has completely vanished for them. Their entire universe has shrunk to the 50 feet of dirt road immediately in front of their machine. In the driver's seat sits a young man named David. His hands are gripping the steering levers so tightly his knuckles are white. He is sweating, though the air in the shadows is cool. David is a boy from the wide-open prairies of the American West. He is used to seeing the horizon. But when he looks through his narrow glass periscope now, all he sees is a wall of leaves. A solid block of textured, mocking green. He cannot see around the bend in the lane. He cannot see what is waiting behind the thick roots. The fear here is not the loud, roaring terror of an open charge. It is the slow, creeping anxiety. It is the agonizing tension of the unseen. David's chest feels tight, not from the cramped space, but from the rhythm of his own heartbeat, thumping loud and fast against his ribs. Up in the turret, Henry, the tank commander, stands with his head just above the rim of the open hatch. Henry is a former school teacher, a quiet man who used to spend his summers birdwatching. Now, he uses those same quiet skills to keep his crew alive. He raises a hand, his fingers spread wide. It is a silent signal. David immediately pulls the levers, cutting the heavy diesel engine. The silence that rushes in is absolute and disorienting. For a moment, there is no war. There is only the beautiful, humming silence of a French summer afternoon. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves of the high canopy overhead. Somewhere, hidden in the branches, a robin sings a sweet, trilling song. Henry stands perfectly still in the turret, his eyes closed, his head tilted slightly to the side. He is listening. In the bocage, your eyes are useless. You have to fight with your ears. He listens for the snap of a dry twig. He listens for the metallic clink of a buckle. He listens for the unnatural silence of birds suddenly taking flight. A small, yellow butterfly drifts lazily down from the hedgerow. It dances lightly in the air before landing gently on the edge of the Sherman's hot, steel gun barrel. It slowly opens and closes its delicate wings, completely unaware of the terrible power it rests upon. Henry watches the butterfly. The tension in his shoulders begins to soften, just a little. He looks down into the dark opening of the hatch, at the pale, anxious faces of his boys looking up at him. He offers a small, reassuring smile. He reaches into the deep pocket of his canvas jacket and pulls out a handful of wild blackberries. He had quietly picked them from the hedge during a brief stop earlier that morning. He passes the berries down into the dark. David takes a few in his greasy palm. He pops one into his mouth. The sudden, bursting sweetness of the warm fruit is almost overwhelming. It tastes of summer. It tastes of home. It is a tiny, profound moment of normalcy amidst the surreal terror of the maze. The sweet juice stains his lips, and for a brief moment, the suffocating grip of the green walls loosens. In the seat behind him, the radio man, a boy barely 19, sits with his heavy headphones pressed tight against his ears. The radio is his only connection to the outside world, to the Grand Army moving somewhere beyond the trees. But today, the thick walls of dirt and roots are blocking the signal. There is only a soft, rhythmic sea of static. He feels incredibly isolated, as if this one tank and these 5 boys are the only people left on the entire earth, wandering endlessly through a forgotten, overgrown garden. To soothe his nerves, he reaches into his breast pocket and traces the outline of a small, silver coin his grandmother had given him before he left. He rubs the smooth metal with his thumb, a repetitive, grounding motion that helps quiet the racing of his mind. Every inch of progress in this beautiful, terrible place is paid for in sheer, exhausting patience. They cannot rush. They cannot run. They must push through the tangled roots and the deep shadows one slow, agonizing foot at a time. It is a slow, methodical unraveling of a deeply tangled path. In many ways, uncovering these deeply personal, forgotten stories of the war feels exactly the same. It requires painstaking, inch-by-inch progress through the dense, tangled archives of history, slowly unearthing the quiet human truths buried beneath the grand narratives. If you value this slow, careful journey into the past, and if you would like to support the massive research and time it takes to carefully unearth these histories, I would be incredibly grateful if you might consider leaving a small tip in my Ko-Fi tip jar. Even something as small as $1 goes a long way in keeping these fragile memories alive. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us return to the quiet, shadowed lane. The golden light of the afternoon slowly begins to fade. In the deep trenches of the sunken roads, twilight arrives much earlier than it does in the open sky above. The rich green of the leaves darkens to olive, then to charcoal, and finally to a solid, impenetrable black. The machine cannot move at night. It is simply too dangerous. Henry gives the quiet order to shut everything down. The crew does not sleep inside the metal hull. The air is too hot, too stale. Instead, they climb out into the cool evening air. They lay their woolen blankets on the soft, damp earth beneath the wide steel belly of the tank. The great metal tracks rise up on either side of them like the walls of a protective cave. Above them, the canopy of the hedgerows is so thick that it blocks out the moon and the stars. It is as though they are sleeping at the bottom of a deep, dark well. David lies on his back, staring up into the blackness. The sweet taste of the blackberries has long faded, replaced by the dry taste of fear. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a folded letter from his older sister. It is too dark to read the words, but he knows them by heart. He traces the creases of the paper. In the letter, she wrote about planting the spring garden back home. She complained playfully about the wild rose bushes ticking over the fence line, and how she spent all afternoon fighting with the thorns. David smiles softly in the dark. The bitter irony is not lost on him. He is half a world away, fighting his own war against the bushes and the thorns. But holding the letter, feeling the physical reality of the paper that her hands had touched, makes the distance feel just a little bit smaller. He hears a soft shifting of canvas. Beside him, the young radio man is shivering, though the night is not cold. Without a word, David reaches over in the dark. He pulls the edge of his own thick woolen blanket over the younger boy's shoulders, tucking it in gently. He leaves his hand resting on the boy's shoulder for a long moment, a firm, warm weight of reassurance. "Get some sleep," David whispers, his voice barely louder than the rustle of the leaves. "The hedges can't hurt us in the dark. We're safe here tonight." The boy's breathing slowly begins to steady. The shivering stops. This is the sanctuary they build for each other. When the armor is not enough, when the guns are useless against the suffocating maze, all they have left is the quiet grace of the man lying next to them. They are brothers of the shadowed lanes, bound together by the roots and the earth, finding comfort in a shared blanket and a whispered promise. The night settles heavily over the bocage. The crickets begin to sing, a soft, soothing lullaby that drowns out the lingering echoes of the day. The great green walls that felt so terrifying in the daylight now stand like silent guardians, hiding them from the rest of the world. The rapid, anxious thumping of David's heart finally begins to slow. It matches the calm, steady rhythm of the crickets. He closes his eyes, letting the scent of the damp Norman earth carry him away from the war. Rest now, dear listener. The engine is cool. The lane is quiet. You have pushed through the tangled maze of your own day, and now it is time to find the clearing. Let the shadows wrap around you, soft and protective. Let your heartbeat slow its hurried pace. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and let the peace of the quiet night hold you until the morning light finds its way through the leaves. To love a thing made of iron is to accept the quiet, heavy truth that it can be broken. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let your eyes softly close. Let the heavy weight of the day slide from your shoulders and sink deeply into the warmth and safety of your bed. Tonight, we are going to look past the thick, olive-painted armor, past the roaring engines and the heavy, grinding tracks, to find the delicate, beating heart hidden within the machine. We are stepping into the profound, quiet intimacy of the crew compartment. Imagine a dense, ancient forest in the late autumn. The leaves have turned deep, magnificent shades of rust, amber, and gold, falling gently to cover the sleeping form of a Sherman tank hidden among the ancient trunks. A steady, gentle rain is falling. It filters through the high canopy, dropping softly onto the metal hull. From the outside, the tank looks like a cold, impassive beast of war. But inside, it sounds like 1,000 tiny fingers tapping a soft, erratic lullaby on a tin roof. Down in the dim, shadowed belly of the machine, the air is thick and warm. It smells of damp wool, sweet pipe tobacco, the metallic tang of brass casings, and the lingering, rich aroma of coffee brewed hours ago over a small, sputtering stove. The 5 men inside know the truth about their machine. They are not naive. They have seen what the war can do to metal. They know that the armor surrounding them, though heavy to the touch, is not an impenetrable shield. They know the dark nicknames whispered by the infantry. They know the terrifying vulnerability of being a large, slow target in a world of unseen dangers. In their darkest, most private thoughts, in the quiet hours just before dawn, the fear creeps in. They trace the seams of the steel with their fingertips and wonder if it will be enough to bring them home. But here, in this rainy, shadowed forest, we find the most beautiful silver lining. Because of this shared vulnerability, because they know the steel might fail them, they have built a different kind of armor. An armor made of absolute, unquestioning devotion to one another. When 5 men are pressed together in a space no larger than a small kitchen, sharing the exact same fears, breathing the exact same air, and relying entirely on each other for their very survival, the middle box ceases to be just a machine. It becomes a crucible that forges a family so close, so intimately bound, that the ties of blood pale in comparison. Let us sit with them in the quiet dark. In the driver's seat sits young Thomas. He is barely 19, a quiet boy from a small farming town who still carries a photograph of his high school sweetheart in his breast pocket. He is leaning his head against the cold, hard rim of his periscope guard. He is listening to the rain, but his mind is racing. The shadows outside feel heavy today. The vulnerability of the thin floor plates beneath his boots is weighing on his mind, a quiet anxiety making his breathing shallow and quick. Beside him in the dark sits Miller, the assistant driver. Miller is older, a man who has seen a bit more of the world. He does not need to see Thomas's face to know the boy is afraid. When you live inside a tank, you learn the physical language of the men around you. You know the exact rhythm of their breathing. You know the slight, nervous shifting of their boots. You know when a silence is peaceful, and when a silence is heavy with dread. Miller does not offer hollow reassurances about the armor. He does not tell Thomas that everything will be fine. Instead, he reaches into his deep canvas pocket and pulls out a heavy, silver $50 coin. He reaches across the dark, cramped space, his shoulder brushing against the radio dials, and gently presses the cold silver coin into Thomas's palm. "My grandfather gave me that," Miller whispers, his voice a low, soothing rumble that barely carries over the sound of the rain. "Told me to rub the eagle's wings when the thunderstorms rolled in. Gives the hand something to do. Gives the mind a place to anchor." Thomas closes his hand around the coin. He rubs his thumb over the worn, silver ridges. It is completely smooth, lacking the harsh, unforgiving angles of the iron tank. It feels incredibly grounding. It is a tiny, physical tether to a world before the war. Thomas takes a slow, deep breath. The rapid beating of his heart begins to steady. This is the silver lining. It is the quiet, profound act of one man sharing his own fragile comfort to steady the racing heart of another. It is a brotherhood forged in the dark, built on small moments of grace. These men share everything. They share their meager rations, slicing a single bruised apple into 5 perfect, equal pieces. They share the warmth of their bodies, sleeping shoulder to shoulder on the engine deck when the night turns bitter cold. They even share their grief, sitting in silent, heavy reverence when a letter from home brings bad news to one of their own. The tank is a world unto itself, and they are its only citizens. This deeply intimate, unspoken bond between the crews, this desire to deeply understand the harsh, forgotten realities of the men who lived inside the steel, is the very heartbeat of history. It is a history that is best shared in quiet spaces, among people who truly care about the human soul beneath the uniform. If you feel drawn to these deep, personal connections, I would love to invite you to join our intimate community of history lovers on Patreon. There, we share free, deep-dive podcasts and completely uncensored content that explores these profoundly human stories in ways we simply cannot do here on this platform. It is a warm, welcoming space for those who want to look beyond the surface and find the true, beating heart of the past. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us return to the quiet, rainy forest, where the afternoon is slowly fading into evening. Up in the turret, standing watch with his head just below the rim of the open hatch, is the commander, a soft-spoken man named Samuel. The cool rain falls lightly on his face, but he does not close the hatch. The fresh air is a blessing in the stifling compartment. Samuel looks down into the dim belly of the tank. By the faint, amber glow of the instrument panel, he watches his boys. He sees Thomas, finally asleep, his hand resting peacefully on his lap, his fingers still loosely curled around the silver coin. He sees Miller, meticulously cleaning a pair of goggles with a soft, dry rag. He sees his gunner and his loader in the back, quietly playing a game of cards, speaking in hushed, murmuring voices so as not to wake the driver. A profound wave of love washes over Samuel. It is a heavy, fiercely protective love. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a small, leather-bound notebook and a stub of a pencil. He rests the notebook against the cold steel of the turret wall and begins to write a letter to his wife. "My dearest," he writes, his handwriting soft and flowing. "The rain has found us again today. We are resting in a forest that looks very much like the woods behind your mother's house. I am looking down at my boys right now. You would love them. They are so young, yet they carry the weight of the world with such quiet grace." He pauses, listening to the rain tap against the hatch. Sometimes, in the night, the fear of this machine catches up to us. We know it is only metal. We know it can be broken. But I want to tell you something I have learned. The steel around us is not our true armor. Our true armor is the way Miller shares his coffee. It is the way Thomas hums when he drives. It is the absolute certainty that if the worst should happen, not a single one of us would leave the other behind. I am safe, my love, not because I am surrounded by iron, but because I am surrounded by brothers. Sleep well tonight, knowing I am never truly alone. He folds the notebook and tucks it back over his heart. He looks out into the gray, misty forest, feeling a deep, abiding peace. The tank may be flawed. The world outside may be terrifying and uncertain. But inside this tiny, cramped space, there is a warmth that the rain can never wash away. This is the beautiful truth of the steel coffins. They were machines of war, yes. But they were also homes. They were sanctuaries where men learned the true meaning of devotion, where they shielded each other not with armor plating, but with quiet kindness, shared laughter, and a love that defied the darkness. The rain continues to fall, a soft, hushed, sweeping sound that blankets the forest in peace. Inside the hull, the breathing of the crew is slow, steady, and deeply synchronized. They are safe for now, held in the gentle embrace of the autumn woods and the unwavering strength of their bond. Rest now, dear listener. The engine is quiet. The rain is washing away the worries of the day. You are safe, you are warm, and you are surrounded by the quiet peace of the night. Let the soft rhythm of the rain carry you away. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and let the morning wait until you are ready. Iron remembers the miles, long after the tired hands that guided it have slipped into a heavy, dreamless sleep. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let out a long, slow breath. Let your shoulders drop. Sink a little deeper into the softness of your bed, and let the quiet of the night wash over you. The day is done. The hurried rushing of the world has paused, and here, in this gentle darkness, there is nowhere you need to be. Tonight, we are going to explore a different kind of burden. We are leaving the sudden, terrifying clashes of steel behind. We are focusing, instead, on the long, quiet spaces in between. We are looking at the endless ribbon of the road and the sheer, physical weight of simply moving forward. Imagine a vast, sprawling landscape stretching out to a hazy, indeterminate horizon. It could be the endless, dusty plains of the East or the winding, rutted country roads of Western Europe. It does not matter. To the men sitting inside the machines, the earth simply becomes a gray, infinite ocean that must be crossed, one agonizing inch at a time. The machine is heavy. We say the word heavy, but it is difficult to truly comprehend the sheer, crushing mass of 30 tons of solid iron. Every time the tank moves, it is fighting a war against gravity and the earth itself. And the things that bear the absolute brunt of this endless war are the tracks. The tracks are the beautiful, terrible legs of the beast. They are made of hundreds of individual steel shoes, pinned together with thick iron rods. They are constantly grinding against stones, tearing through roots, and sinking into the mud. They are punished without mercy, mile after endless mile. And eventually, beneath the relentless friction of the world, the metal simply surrenders. A pin snaps. A link shatters. The track is thrown. When this happens, the great roaring journey comes to a sudden, jarring halt. The engine is cut. The sudden silence that falls over the crew is thick and disorienting. Let us step out into the dust with the crew of a T-34. The afternoon sun is a dull, brassy disk hanging low in the sky, baking the earth until it cracks. The air is still, smelling sharply of hot dust, scorched iron, and the sweet, heavy scent of leaking diesel fluid. The boys climb out of their hatches. Their faces are pale beneath masks of dark, gray dust. They move slowly, their limbs heavy, their joints aching with a profound, bone-deep fatigue. This is not the sharp, adrenaline-fueled exhaustion of battle. This is a soul-crushing weariness. It is the feeling of having pushed a boulder up a mountain for 100 days, only to find another mountain waiting at the top. They stand around the broken track, looking down at the heavy steel links buried in the dirt. There are no mechanics to call. There is no tow truck coming. There is only them, and the heavy iron tools strapped to the side of the hull. A boy named Anton, his uniform stained dark with sweat and old oil, reaches for the sledgehammer. The handle is thick, worn smooth by the grip of a dozen men before him. He lifts it, his shoulders screaming in quiet protest. The sledgehammer feels as though it weighs 100 pounds. Beside him, an older man named Boris kneels in the dirt. He is holding a new, heavy steel pin, guiding it into the broken link with his bare, calloused hands. His fingers are slick with thick, black grease. Now, Boris whispers, his voice cracked and dry. Anton swings the hammer. Metal strikes metal with a dull, ringing thud that echoes across the empty plains. He swings again. And again. The vibrations travel up the wooden handle, rattling his already exhausted bones. Sweat drips from his chin, falling into the dry, thirsty earth. It is agonizing, brutal, physical labor, performed under a punishing sun by men who have not slept in a bed in over a year. After an hour, the pin is finally driven home. The track is whole again. Anton drops the hammer into the dust. He leans his back against the hot, curved armor of the road wheels and slowly slides down until he is sitting in the dirt. He rests his forearms on his knees, his head hanging low. His chest heaves with exertion. He is covered from head to toe in thick, black grease and pale dust. He feels as though he cannot take another step. Boris sits down beside him. The older man reaches for a battered tin canteen. He does not take a drink. Instead, he unscrews the cap and gently tips the canteen over Anton's blackened, blistered hands. A small stream of tepid water flows over the boy's skin, washing away a thin layer of the harsh grease. Boris takes a clean, relatively dry corner of his own sleeve and gently wipes Anton's face, clearing the dust from his eyes. It is an act of profound, tender care. In a world defined by the harshness of iron and the cruelty of the endless march, this small gesture of washing a friend's face is a beautiful, quiet rebellion. It says, I see your suffering. I share your burden. You are not alone in the dust. This intense, tactile reality of the war, the heavy weight of the steel pins, the slickness of the grease, the rough, worn canvas of the uniforms, is something that words can only gently brush against. The physical exhaustion of the crews was intimately tied to the physical objects around them. The machinery, the tools, the very fabric they wore became a part of their survival. When we hear these stories, it is natural to feel a desire to connect with that tactile history, to honor their profound endurance by holding a piece of the past in our own hands. For those who wish to bridge the gap of time through physical connection, I highly recommend exploring the WWII enthusiast items available on Amazon. Whether it is a piece of authentic historical memorabilia that carries the literal weight of history, or experiencing the incredible visual storytelling of the movie Midway on Prime, these resources allow us to deeply honor and remember the sheer physical reality of their journey. It brings their distant, dusty world just a little bit closer to our own. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us leave the dusty plains and travel to a different kind of road. Far away, a Sherman tank is navigating a narrow, ancient cobblestone street in a shattered European village. The physical toll here is different, but no less profound. Inside the driver's compartment, a young man named Elias sits with his hands locked in a death grip around the steering levers. The tank is moving slowly, but the ride is agonizing. Every single cobblestone, every rut, every piece of broken stone in the road sends a sharp, violent shock wave up through the metal tracks, through the floor plates, and directly into Elias's body. The vibration is constant. It is a deep, mechanical shivering that chatters the teeth and numbs the fingertips. Elias has been driving for 14 hours straight. The muscles in his forearms are burning with a dull, constant ache. His lower back feels as though it is made of bruised glass. When the tank finally rolls to a stop at the edge of the village, and the engine is mercifully cut, the silence is wonderful. But for Elias, the shaking does not stop. He sits in the dark, his hands resting on his lap, and watches his fingers tremble. The vibration of the machine has seeped into his very nervous system. His body is still rolling down the road, even though the tracks are still. He climbs slowly out of his hatch, his legs feeling like heavy, waterlogged wood. He sits on the front slope of the armor, resting his back against the cold steel of the gun barrel. The evening air is cool and damp. Elias pulls a small, slightly crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. It is a letter he started writing 3 days ago, but has been too exhausted to finish. He clicks a pen and rests the paper against his knee. He does not write about the fighting. He does not want to worry his mother with tales of danger. Instead, he writes about the sheer, overwhelming distance. "Mom," he writes, his handwriting shaky from the lingering vibrations. "I feel like I have been driving since the world began. The roads here never end. They just roll out, over one hill, and then there is another hill. I look at the tracks of this tank, and I wonder how many miles of earth they have pressed down. Sometimes, I close my eyes, and all I can see is the white line of the road stretching into the dark." He pauses, staring out at the quiet, shadowed trees at the edge of the village. He misses the stillness of his own bedroom. He misses the feeling of walking on soft grass, instead of riding on unforgiving iron. But then, he continues, "I remember that every single time this heavy track turns over, it is bringing me 1 foot closer to the day I can turn around and come back to you. I measure the distance to our front porch not in miles, but in the rotation of these heavy wheels. I am tired, Mom. I am so deeply tired. But I am keeping the engine running. I will keep driving until the road leads me back home." He signs his name, his eyes heavy with sleep. He folds the letter and tucks it away. The weight of the tracks is more than just iron. It is the immense, physical manifestation of their burden. Every broken pin, every thrown link, every hour spent vibrating against the cold steel is a testament to their quiet, unyielding endurance. They are pushing thousands of tons of metal across the face of the earth, fueled by nothing more than weak coffee, shared cigarettes, and a desperate, beautiful desire to find the end of the road. Look at them now, resting in the twilight. Anton, sleeping in the dust of the steppe, his face wiped clean by a friend. Elias, resting his aching back against the gun barrel, dreaming of a soft bed. The tools have been put away. The repairs are finished. The great machines sit quietly in the fading light, cooling, ticking softly as the metal contracts. They have carried their crews through another day. They have borne the weight of the miles, and tomorrow they will bear them again. But tomorrow is far away. For now, the marching has ceased. The world is perfectly still. The heavy, endless momentum of the day has gently glided to a halt. You can let go of the steering levers now. You can set the heavy hammer down. The miles you have traveled today are behind you, recorded in the dust and the memory, and there is absolutely nothing left for you to carry tonight. Rest your tired hands, dear listener. Let the vibrations of the day fade from your body. The tracks are quiet. The road is dark and peaceful. Allow the stillness to wrap around you like a heavy, comforting blanket. Breathe out the exhaustion, and breathe in the deep, sweet peace of the night. Sleep deeply, sleep well, and let the quiet darkness hold you until the dawn. The snow did not merely cover the earth, it erased it, leaving behind a silence so absolute it felt as though the whole world was holding its terrified breath. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, draw your blankets all the way up to your chin. Let your head sink deeply into the softness of your pillow, and allow the tension in your shoulders to simply melt away. You are safe here, in the quiet warmth of your room. Tonight, we are leaving the damp, autumn forests behind. The seasons have turned once more, with a cruel and sudden violence. We are traveling to the deep, ancient woods of the Ardennes, into the very heart of a winter so bitter, so profoundly cold, that the memory of summer feels like a dream that belonged to someone else. Imagine a forest of towering, dark pine trees, their heavy branches sagging under the weight of endless, falling snow. The sky is a perpetual, flat sheet of pale gray. There is no sun, no dawn, no dusk. There is only the freezing fog, rolling through the timber like a thick, white ghost. Hidden within this frozen maze sits a Sherman tank. But it is no longer the deep, olive-green machine that rolled off the factory floor. To survive in this white, blinding world, the men have had to become ghosts themselves. In the days before the deepest freeze set in, the crew desperately painted their tank with whatever they could find. They used buckets of thin, chalky whitewash, their bare, shivering hands holding freezing brushes. When the paint ran out, they draped the cold steel with white medical sheets, tearing the fabric to tie it around the gun barrel and the road wheels. Now, the machine looks like a phantom of iron, blending perfectly into the snowdrifts, shivering in the silent woods. Let us slip inside. If the tank was an oven in the desert sands, here in the deep winter, it has become a crypt of ice. Solid steel is a conductor. It does not block the cold, it absorbs it, magnifies it, and radiates it deep into the bones of the men trapped inside. The temperature in the dark, cramped belly of the tank is far below freezing. A thick layer of white, crystalline frost coats the ceiling, the dials, and the periscopes. Every breath the boys take hangs in the air, a thick plume of white vapor that slowly settles as ice upon their collars. In the commander's seat sits a man named Arthur. He is 30 years old, but in the dim, blue light of the frozen turret, the deep lines around his eyes make him look much older. He wears 3 layers of woolen sweaters under his canvas jacket, but he is still shivering. A constant, fine vibration shakes his shoulders. Below him, in the driver's seat, sits little Jimmy. Jimmy just turned 19. He is a boy from the warm, sun-baked hills of California, and he has never seen snow like this in his entire life. His boots are frozen completely stiff, the leather as hard as iron. He cannot feel his toes. He sits with his knees pulled tightly to his chest, trying to make himself as small as possible, trying to hold on to whatever tiny spark of body heat remains. Arthur looks down at the boy. He sees the violent shivering. He sees the pale, bluish tint to Jimmy's lips. Arthur does not offer empty words of encouragement. In the cruel embrace of the winter, words hold no warmth. Instead, Arthur reaches around to the back of his own neck. He unwinds a thick, gray woolen scarf. It was knitted by his wife, sent in a brown paper package months ago. It still smells faintly of the cedar chest in his bedroom back home. Arthur climbs down into the lower compartment. The space is so tight he can barely move, but he manages to kneel beside Jimmy. He gently, carefully, wraps the thick gray wool around the boy's neck, tucking the ends deep into Jimmy's jacket to seal out the freezing air. "Keep it tight, kid," Arthur whispers, his breath pluming in the dark. Jimmy looks up, his eyes wide and watering from the cold. He reaches up with a stiff, clumsy hand and touches the soft wool. It is the only soft thing in a world made entirely of jagged ice and freezing iron. He nods, unable to speak around the chattering of his teeth. "Thank you, Artie," he finally manages to whisper. Arthur just smiles, a quiet, reassuring expression, and pats the boy heavily on the shoulder. This is the only way they survive. The armor of the tank cannot protect them from the winter. Their survival depends entirely on the sharing of a scarf, the pressing of shoulders together in the dark, and the quiet, desperate rationing of human warmth. A few hours later, the crew partakes in their most sacred, daily ritual. They crack open a small tin of rations, perhaps beans, or a thick, salty stew. They cannot light a fire outside, the smoke would give away their position in the stark white forest. So, they use a tiny, wax heat tab right there in the crew compartment. The match strikes with a sharp hiss. A tiny, miraculous orange flame flickers in the gloom. The 5 men huddle around it as if it were a roaring hearth. They hold the tin over the small flame, waiting with agonizing patience. Slowly, the frozen stew begins to melt. A faint, wonderful aroma of warm salt and cooked meat fills the cramped space. When the tin is hot, Arthur takes it from the flame. The metal burns his bare fingers, but he does not let go. He relishes the sharp, stinging pain, because it means his hands are finally feeling something other than the numb ache of the frost. He takes a small sip of the warm broth, closing his eyes as the heat travels down his throat, blooming like a tiny sun in his chest. Then, he passes it to the gunner. The gunner takes a sip, holding the warm tin against his freezing cheek for just a moment before passing it to the loader. The single tin is passed around the circle in perfect silence in the dark. It is a communion of survival. A quiet sharing of life in a forest that wants only to freeze them. These men, huddled together in their whitewashed machine, are completely isolated from the rest of the world. They are cut off by the snow, hidden by the fog, and wrapped in a profound, terrifying silence. They are fighting a secret battle against the elements, unseen and largely forgotten by the grand sweep of history happening miles away. This war was full of such hidden struggles. While the history books often focus on the massive, sweeping front lines, so much of the true courage occurred in the shadows, entirely out of sight. The forgotten, freezing heroes of the Ardennes share a quiet kinship with the countless men and women who operated in absolute secrecy, hidden from the eyes of the world. If you find yourself moved by these unseen stories, by the quiet courage of those who fought in the hidden corners of history, I have something very special to share with you. I send out a gentle, weekly email newsletter, and as a welcome gift, I offer a free ebook titled The Shadow War, 5 Top-Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. It is a deeply respectful dive into the forgotten facts, the hidden heroes, and the espionage that turned the tide of the world while no one was looking. It is a wonderful way to honor all those who fought in the quiet shadows. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the frozen silence of the Sherman. The heat tab burns out, plunging the tank back into deep shadows. The warmth of the soup fades far too quickly, but the memory of it lingers, a small comfort in the long night. Jimmy leans his head back against the cold steel. He pulls his freezing hands out of his gloves and shoves them deep into his armpits, trying to find a pocket of warmth. The gray scarf is pulled securely over his nose and mouth. He closes his eyes and tries to cast his mind as far away from the Ardennes as possible. He thinks of his mother's kitchen in California. He imagines the warm, golden sunlight pouring through the window over the sink. He can almost smell the sweet, heavy scent of oranges baking in the sun outside. He remembers the feeling of walking barefoot on the warm, dry grass of his front lawn. He holds onto these memories tightly. They are fragile, delicate things, but in this frozen metal box, they are the only things keeping his spirit from shattering. He builds a warm house in his mind, and he hides inside it while the winter wind begins to howl outside the armor. Every few hours, the agonizing silence of the woods is broken by a necessity of survival. The heavy diesel engine of the Sherman must be started. If they let it sit perfectly cold for too long, the oil will freeze solid, the batteries will die, and the machine will become a permanent, iron tomb. Arthur reaches forward and presses the starter. The engine groans, a deep, protesting metallic grind. It coughs, sputters, and finally catches with a thick plume of black exhaust that stains the pure white snow behind them. The engine settles into a low, heavy idle. It vibrates through the floor plates. To the freezing crew, it is the most beautiful sound in the world. Slowly, ever so slowly, a faint, meager warmth begins to bleed through the firewall into the crew compartment. It is barely enough to melt the frost on their collars, but it is enough to keep them alive. The men close their eyes. The low, rhythmic thrumming of the engine acts as a mechanical lullaby. It rocks them gently in the dark. The vibration massages their aching, shivering muscles. Arthur takes the first watch. He sits up in the turret, wrapped in every blanket they have, his eyes peering through the thin glass slit into the blinding white dark. He watches the falling snow, mesmerized by the hypnotic, endless descent of the flakes. He looks down at his sleeping crew. Jimmy is curled into a tight ball, his breathing shallow but steady. The gunner and the loader are leaning against each other, sharing their body heat, their heads resting together in an exhausted, trusting embrace. Arthur feels a profound, heavy peace settle over him. The cold is terrible. The winter is cruel. But in this tiny, shared space, they have built a fortress of care. The snow will continue to fall, burying the tracks, burying the forest, trying to bury them. But the iron heart of the machine beats on, and the fragile, resilient hearts of the boys beat right along with it. Rest now, dear listener. The engine is running. The watch is set. You do not need to face the cold outside your window. The blankets are pulled tight, and you are surrounded by the quiet, peaceful warmth of your own home. Let the soft, steady hum of the night carry you away. Sleep deeply, sleep without worry, and know that the morning will come, bringing the light, bringing the thaw, and bringing you safely to a new day. The earth no longer felt like a mother's embrace, it felt like a heavy, unending memory of sorrow. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let out a long, slow breath, and let the weary weight of the day slide from your shoulders. Sink deeper into the quiet safety of your bed. The world outside your window is still, and here, in the gentle dark, there is only the soft sound of my voice. Tonight, we journey forward, leaving the bitter, frozen forests behind. The snow has melted. The earth has thawed. And the great iron machines of the East are moving, no longer fighting for the soil of their birth, but crossing over into the vast, unfamiliar stretches of Eastern Europe. Imagine a tide of dark green steel, slowly, inexorably rolling across a landscape that is both beautiful and deeply scarred. The T-34s move in a long, winding column, their tracks churning up the soft spring earth. For the men inside, the feeling is profoundly complex. For years, every turn of the tracks was a desperate fight to survive on their own farms, outside their own cities. Now, the signs on the roads are written in languages they do not speak. The architecture of the ruined farmhouses looks foreign. They are the victors, pushing the storm back to where it began, but inside the cramped, echoing belly of the tank, there is no grand sense of triumph. There is only a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. Let us sit beside a young driver named Pyotr. He is 20 years old, though his eyes carry the heavy, ancient weariness of a man who has seen a century pass. His hands rest lightly on the steering levers. The heavy vibrations of the massive diesel engine rumble through the floor plates, traveling up his boots and into his chest. It is a constant, mechanical heartbeat that he has learned to sleep to eat to, and to dream to. Pyotr looks through his narrow glass periscope. The world outside is framed in a small, horizontal rectangle of thick glass. He sees rolling hills, turning a soft, hopeful green with the arrival of spring. But cutting through the green are the deep, black scars of the war. Trenches, craters, the skeletal remains of what were once quiet villages. Above him in the turret, the commander, a quiet, broad-shouldered man named Vasily, stands with his head out of the hatch. The wind catches his dark hair. Vasily does not look at the horizon with the eyes of a conqueror. He looks at the ruined fields with the eyes of a farmer. He sees the soil turned over not by a plow, but by artillery. He feels a profound, silent grief for the land itself, regardless of whose borders it sits within. The column slows. The deep roar of the engines drops to a low, heavy idle. They are passing through the remains of a small, unnamed town. Vasily taps his foot gently on Pyotr's shoulder, a silent command to halt. The great machine glides to a stop, the tracks squeaking softly against the cobblestones. The sudden quiet is immense, broken only by the low thrum of the idling engine and the soft sound of a spring breeze blowing through the shattered windows of the houses around them. Vasily looks down into the street. There, sitting in the dust amidst the fallen bricks, is a wooden chair. It is perfectly intact, its paint peeling, placed gently upright as if waiting for someone to come out and enjoy the afternoon sun. Next to the chair, a small, scruffy dog is curled up, its head resting on its paws. The dog looks up at the massive, terrifying iron beast that has stopped beside it. It does not run. It is too tired to run. Vasily reaches into his deep canvas pocket. He pulls out a small, hard piece of dark ration bread. He breaks it in half, the dry crust crumbling in his thick fingers. Slowly, deliberately, so as not to startle the creature, he tosses the piece of bread down onto the cobblestones. The dog raises its head, sniffs the air, and slowly stands. It walks over to the bread, picks it up gently in its teeth, and looks back up at Vasily. In that brief, silent exchange between a weary man and a machine of war and a forgotten creature in a ruined town, there is a universe of gentle humanity. It is a tiny, beautiful rebellion against the destruction that surrounds them. Vasily smiles, a soft, sad expression that crinkles the corners of his eyes, and gently taps Pyotr's shoulder again. The engine rises in pitch, and the tank rolls slowly onward, leaving the dog to eat in peace. These are the quiet, complex realities of the red tide rolling westward. It was not just a story of sweeping arrows on a map or endless, glorious liberation. It was a grim, messy, and deeply sorrowful journey through a broken world. The men inside the tanks felt the heavy tragedy of the ruined homes they passed. They felt the complex, uncensored truth of a continent torn apart. So much of this grim, unvarnished reality has been smoothed over by the passage of time. If you feel a desire to truly understand the heavy, uncensored truth of this push into Eastern Europe, to see the war as Vasily and Pyotr saw it, I have made something available for you. I have curated a collection of raw, unblurred photos and videos on Gumroad. These are the restricted, unfiltered glimpses into the true reality of the Eastern Front that are simply too harsh and real to share on this platform. It is a way to look these exhausted men in the eyes and honor the true, complex burden they carried. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the slow, heavy rhythm of the tracks. The day wanes. The soft spring sun begins to set, casting long, golden shadows across the unfamiliar hills. The column finally pulls off the road, drawing the tanks into a tight circle in a quiet, undisturbed meadow near the edge of a forest. The engines are cut. The sudden, absolute silence that rushes in is like a physical weight being lifted from the chest. The men climb out of the hatches, their muscles stiff, their joints aching from the endless vibration. They stretch their arms, breathing in the cool evening air. It smells of damp earth and pine needles. Pyotr sits on the front slope of the armor. The metal is still wonderfully warm from the day's journey. He pulls a small, worn notebook from his tunic. The pages are soft and dog-eared. He finds his stub of a pencil and smooths the paper over his knee. He is writing a letter to his younger sister, far away in a village that has finally found peace. He does not write to her about the ruined towns. He does not write about the strange, foreign words on the road signs, or the heavy, sorrowful looks on the faces of the people they pass. He wants to protect her from the grayness of his world. "My dear little bird," he writes, his handwriting neat and careful. The weather has finally turned warm. We are resting in a meadow tonight that is full of tiny white flowers. I saw a dog today, sitting on a cobblestone street. Vasily gave him some of our bread, and the dog seemed very grateful. It made me think of our old hound, sleeping by the stove. The world is very big, and we have driven very far, but I am keeping my boots dry. I hope you are helping Mother with the planting. I will bring you a smooth stone from a river here when I return. He closes the notebook. He rubs his thumb over the worn cover. He has built a gentle, peaceful world in those few lines, a safe harbor of words sent out across the miles to wrap around the shoulders of a child. Vasily walks over and hands Pyotr a tin cup of warm tea, brewed over a small, hidden fire. Pyotr takes it, wrapping his hands around the warm metal. They sit together in the gathering dusk, not speaking, just listening to the wind rustle through the pines. The tide of the war has carried them far from the homes they knew, washing them up on these strange, quiet shores. But the iron surrounding them is just a shell. Inside, they are still just men, finding comfort in a shared cup of tea, a memory of home, and the quiet camaraderie of the dark. Rest now, dear listener. The great machines are asleep in the meadow. The day's journey is over. The heavy burden of the world has been set aside for the night. Let the quiet peace of the spring evening wash over you. Close your eyes, let your breathing slow to the gentle rhythm of the sleeping earth, and drift away into a safe, untroubled dream. When the iron grows cold, the most beautiful sound in the entire world is the soft, familiar breath of a friend. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, close your eyes. Let your head sink deeply into the softness of your pillow, and allow the heavy, hurried thoughts of your day to simply melt away into the shadows. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. Tonight, we are not marching. We are not pushing through the mud, and we are not fighting the bitter cold. Tonight, the great machines are finally resting, and we are going to rest right alongside them. We are stepping into the most intimate, quiet spaces of the war. We are listening to the whispers in the turret. Imagine a vast, open field beneath a canopy of 1 billion glittering stars. The night is profoundly still. Sitting in the center of this field is the dark, heavy silhouette of a T-34. It looks like a great sleeping beast, its tracks resting in the damp grass, its long gun barrel pointed toward a horizon that is finally peaceful. The roaring of the diesel engine has been silenced for hours, but the machine is not truly cold. The massive iron engine block, tucked away in the back, holds onto its heat like a hidden hearth. It takes a long, long time for that much iron to cool, and the crew knows exactly how to use this gentle, lingering warmth. Climb up onto the back deck of the tank. Move softly, so as not to disturb the profound quiet of the night. Here, sitting cross-legged on the heavy metal grates, are 2 men. The commander, an older man named Anton, and his young loader, a boy named Yuri. They are wrapped tightly in heavy, padded coats, their collars pulled up against the mild chill of the midnight air. Between them, resting directly on the warm steel over the engine, is a battered tin cup. Yuri reaches into his pocket and pulls out a tiny, folded scrap of brown paper. He opens it with the utmost care, as if it holds diamond dust. Inside is a small pinch of loose, black tea leaves. He has saved this for weeks, carrying it through the rain and the mud, waiting for a night just like this. With thick, calloused fingers, he gently sprinkles the leaves into the cup of water. They do not speak. They simply sit together in the dark, watching the faint wisp of steam begin to rise from the tin as the engine's residual heat slowly, patiently brews the tea. When it is ready, Anton picks up the cup. The metal is comfortably hot against his palms. He takes a slow, deep breath, inhaling the rich, earthy scent of the tea, a scent that reminds him of his grandmother's kitchen, of a world that was soft and safe. He takes a small sip, letting the warmth travel down his throat, and then he gently passes the cup to Yuri. "My mother had a rose bush by the front window," Yuri whispers. His voice is barely a breath, softer than the wind rustling through the tall grass. He speaks quietly, not because there are enemies nearby, but because the night is so beautiful and still, and speaking aloud would feel like breaking a sacred spell. In the summer, when the window was open, the whole house smelled like red petals. I was just thinking about that. I can almost smell it now, over the iron. Anton nods slowly in the dark. He reaches out and rests his heavy, warm hand on the boy's shoulder. "I know the smell, little brother," Anton whispers back. "We will see the summer roses again. The iron will not last forever." It is a tiny, fragile conversation. Just two men sharing a single cup of warm water and a memory of flowers. But in the vast, overwhelming darkness of the world, this small moment of shared humanity is a lifeline. It is the tether that keeps their minds from drifting away into the terrifying depths of the war. They are saving each other's sanity, one whispered memory at a time. Now, let us leave the starry field and travel west. We find a Sherman tank parked inside the skeletal remains of an old stone barn. The roof is mostly gone, but the heavy stone walls offer a comforting illusion of shelter. A gentle, sweeping rain is falling outside, pattering softly against the cobblestones and hissing lightly against the painted steel of the hull. Inside the turret, the space is absolute, velvet blackness. The air is heavy with the scent of damp canvas and old leather. The commander, a former schoolteacher named Thomas, is sitting in his seat, his knees pulled up, his head resting against the cold wall. Below him sits his gunner, William, a quiet boy from a crowded city neighborhood. There is a sudden, sharp scrape of a match. A tiny flare of brilliant yellow light illuminates the cramped space for just a fraction of a second. It casts deep shadows across their tired faces, revealing the lines of exhaustion etched into their skin. And then the match goes out, leaving only a tiny, glowing red cherry of a cigarette in the dark. William takes a deep drag. The red ember brightens, casting a faint, warm, crimson glow on his cheek. He exhales, a long, slow sigh that mingles with the sound of the rain. Then, he reaches his hand up into the dark. Thomas meets his hand, taking the cigarette. Their fingers brush for a moment. It is a simple, wordless exchange of comfort. "Tommy," William whispers, his voice trembling just a little. "Do you ever worry that the quiet is going to be too loud when we go home? I've forgotten what a room sounds like when there isn't a machine running inside of it. I'm afraid I won't know how to sleep in a silent house." Thomas takes a drag of the cigarette. The red glow illuminates his soft, reassuring smile. He holds the smoke in his lungs for a moment before letting it go. "The quiet will feel strange at first, Thomas whispers back, leaning closer so his words wrap around his friend like a blanket. "But it's a good kind of strange. You'll hear the floorboards creak when your mother walks down the hall. You'll hear the rain on the window pane, just like tonight, but without the armor in the way. We'll learn how to listen to the soft things again. I promise you." He passes the cigarette back down. The tiny, glowing ember moves back and forth in the dark like a slow, rhythmic pendulum. These men are completely stripped of the comforts we take for granted. They have no soft beds, no warm fires, no locked doors to keep the world away. All they have is each other. Their survival is not just physical, it is profoundly emotional. The quiet resilience they show in these late hours is built entirely on small, vital gestures of sharing comfort. A passing of a cigarette. A shared cup of tea. A whispered promise in the dark that everything will eventually be all right. These tiny gestures cost nothing, yet they carry the weight of the entire world for the men receiving them. They are small acts that sustain the human spirit when it is pushed to its absolute limits. It is a beautiful truth that immense things are often sustained by very small, thoughtful gestures. The massive research and the countless hours it takes to carefully unearth these forgotten, human histories, to bring these whispers in the dark back into the light, is a labor of deep love. And much like the small, vital gestures of the tank crews, this work is sustained by small, thoughtful acts of kindness from people like you. If you find peace in these stories, and if you would like to help keep this history alive, I would be deeply grateful if you might consider leaving a small tip in my Ko-Fi tip jar. Even a gesture as small as $1 is incredibly vital. It is a warm hand on the shoulder, a shared cup of tea, a gentle encouragement that allows me to keep telling these stories for you. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet dark of the turret, where the rain continues to fall. The cigarette finally burns down to the very end. The glowing red ember is carefully pinched out, and the absolute darkness rushes back in, wrapping the two men in a thick, protective cocoon. Thomas leans his head back against the steel. The lingering smell of the smoke is comforting, a familiar scent in an unfamiliar world. He listens to the rhythmic breathing of his gunner in the seat below. The trembling in William's voice has stopped. The whispered promise of a quiet house and creaking floorboards has done its work. The fear has been gently pushed away for the night. Across the world, on the starlit steppe, the tin cup is empty. Anton and Yuri have climbed down from the warm engine deck and slipped back into the belly of their own machine. The heavy hatches are pulled shut, sealing them away from the vastness of the night. In both tanks, the whispers finally fade away. The stories have been told. The memories have been shared. The fragile, beautiful connection between the men has been reaffirmed, a daily ritual that reminds them they are not simply gears in a machine, but human beings who are loved, and who are holding onto each other in the dark. The silence that settles over the crews now is not heavy, and it is not terrifying. It is the deep, peaceful silence of true rest. It is the silence of men who know that the person sleeping next to them would give their life to keep them safe. The great iron machines stand perfectly still. They are formidable, heavy, and cold on the outside. But inside, they are warm. They are filled with the gentle, rhythmic rising and falling of chests. They are filled with dreams of rose bushes, of summer rain, of front doors closing softly in the evening. You, too, can let the whispers of your own mind fade away now. The worries of tomorrow do not belong in this peaceful space. You are safe in your room. The doors are locked, the night is quiet, and the gentle rain is washing the world clean. Let the darkness wrap around you like a soft, heavy blanket. Breathe in the stillness. Breathe out the lingering tension of the day. Feel the comforting weight of your own bed, holding you secure, just as the iron cradle holds the sleeping boys. Rest now, dear listener. The engines are silent. The whispers are gone. There is only peace left in the night. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and let the quiet carry you away. The heaviest shadow does not fall from the towering trees, but from the terrifying, fragile promise of tomorrow. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let your eyes softly close. Let the heavy, hurried thoughts of your day slip from your mind, just like leaves falling gently to a forest floor. You are safe here. You are warm. Let my voice be the slow, gentle current that carries you away from your worries and transports you into the quietest corners of the past. Tonight, we are crossing a border. We are entering an ancient, breathing place known as the Reichswald, the Imperial Forest. Imagine a woodland so incredibly dense, so thick with towering, dark pine trees, that their branches interlock high above like woven fingers, completely blotting out the sky. It is a world of perpetual twilight, a place where the sun only manages to pierce the canopy in thin, dusty golden rays that barely reach the ground. The air here is cool and profoundly still, heavy with the rich, deep scent of wet pine needles, damp earth, and the ancient, quiet breath of the trees. The forest floor is a soft, spongy carpet of moss and fallen leaves, silencing the footsteps of the world. Into this deep, green stillness rolls the Sherman tank. It moves agonizingly slowly, inching its way along narrow, muddy logging trails. The heavy metal tracks crush the soft pine cones and dead branches, a rhythmic, muffled crunching that sounds like a giant's slow, steady heartbeat in the gloom. The dark olive paint of the machine blends seamlessly into the shadows, making the tank look like a natural creature of the woods, a quiet iron beast seeking shelter beneath the boughs. The men inside this machine are carrying a new kind of weight today. It is not the physical weight of the tracks, nor the bitter cold of the winter snows they left behind in the Ardennes. It is a weight that sits squarely on the chest, making every breath feel shallow and tight. It is the crushing, agonizing weight of hope. The whispers have reached them. The letters from home, the static-filled radio broadcasts, the changing shape of the maps, they all point to one undeniable truth. The war is drawing to a close. The end is no longer a mythical concept, a distant dream to be wished for upon a star. It is a physical place. It is just a few miles down the road. You might think this knowledge would bring a soaring, unbridled joy. You might think the men inside the steel would be celebrating. But inside the cramped, dim belly of the tank, the nearness of the end brings a suffocating, deeply private fear. For years, these boys survived by accepting the dark. They made a quiet peace with the reality that they might never see their homes again. That acceptance was a shield, a way to numb the mind so the body could keep moving forward. But now, the light is visible. The shield has been lowered. And the thought of falling now, of being the last name written on the final page of this terrible story, is almost too much to bear. It makes the hands shake. It makes the heart race. Every shadow behind every ancient pine tree becomes a phantom. Every snapped twig in the distance sounds like the end of the world. Look closely at a young boy named William, sitting quietly in the bow gunner's seat. He is only 21, but the deep, exhausted lines around his eyes belong to an old man. He is staring out through his narrow glass periscope into the dark, endless trees. His foot taps a nervous, erratic rhythm against the cold metal floor plates. William has survived so much. He has driven through the baking sands, he has navigated the claustrophobic hedgerows, and he has shivered through the freezing snow. He has walked through the fire, and now, he is absolutely terrified of tripping on the final step. He closes his eyes, trying to regulate his breathing, but the quiet of the forest is too loud. The anticipation is a physical ache in his bones. Up in the turret, the commander, an older, soft-spoken man named James, watches the boy. James knows this fear intimately. He feels it sitting heavy and cold in his own chest. He knows that the hardest steps a man will ever take are the ones that lead right up to the threshold of his own front door. James does not shout orders. He does not offer hollow words about bravery or duty. He knows that in the shadows of the Reichswald, words are meaningless. He climbs slowly down from the turret, his worn boots moving softly in the cramped space. He sits down on the cold floor plates right beside William. He doesn't say a single word. He simply leans over and rests his heavy shoulder firmly against William's shoulder. It is a simple, quiet, physical reminder. It says, I am here. You are not alone. I feel it too, and we will cross this final finish line together. William leans back, resting his head against the cold steel of the hull, and lets out a long, shaky breath. The solid, warm presence of his commander acts as an anchor. The erratic tapping of his foot slowly comes to a stop. The trembling in his hands begins to ease. In the darkest moments of the human mind, the simple warmth of a friend sitting beside you in the dark is the greatest medicine the world has ever known. A little while later, in the quiet dimness of the idling tank, William pulls a small, battered piece of paper from his pocket. He finds a stub of a pencil, its lead dull and worn, and rests the paper against his knee. He is writing to his father. Dad, he writes, his letters soft and slightly wobbly in the faint light of the instrument panel. We are resting in a forest today. It smells exactly like the pine trees behind our old house, the ones we used to hide in when it rained. They say we are almost there, Dad. They say the road is running out. He pauses, staring at the paper. A single tear tracks through the dust on his cheek, but his face remains perfectly calm. I am so deeply tired, he continues, his pencil whispering against the page. And I am so afraid to hope. But when I close my eyes, I can almost hear the screen door banging in the wind. I can almost smell Mom's coffee on the stove. I am keeping my head down. James is looking out for me, just like you asked him to in your letters. Please, Dad, keep the porch light on. I am trying so hard to come home. He folds the letter with extreme care, making sure the edges align perfectly, and tucks it deep into his breast pocket, holding it close to his heart like a fragile glass ornament. The psychological toll of these final days, this profound, agonizing fear of being the last man to fall, is a heavy, intimate reality. It is a depth of human experience that is so often completely overshadowed by the grand celebrations and the sweeping historical narratives of the war's end. But to truly know these men, we must sit with them in the shadows of their fear. If you feel a desire to truly understand the complex, uncensored hearts of these crews during this intense final push, to hear the deeply personal stories that history books often leave out, I warmly invite you to join our intimate community of history lovers on Patreon. There, we share free, deep-dive podcasts and uncensored discussions that honor the deep psychological reality of these men. It is a space for true connection, where we can explore the quietest, most vulnerable moments of the past together. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet, ancient stillness of the Reichswald. The tank has finally come to a halt for the night. The driver reaches forward and cuts the engine. The massive diesel beast sighs, clicks, and finally falls completely silent. The profound stillness of the forest rushes in immediately, wrapping around the iron machine like a thick, comforting green blanket. Outside, a gentle rain begins to fall. It is a soft, whispering drizzle. The drops land high up on the upper canopy, and slowly, gently drip down through the millions of pine needles, eventually tapping a soothing, erratic, and deeply peaceful rhythm against the steel roof of the turret. Inside the dark cabin, James reaches into his canvas bag. He pulls out a small treasure he has been saving for weeks, a single tin of preserved peaches. He opens it with his knife, the metal peeling back with a soft, satisfying sound. He does not eat them himself. He divides the soft fruit and the sweet syrup equally among the 5 men in the dark. They eat in total silence. The sudden, bright sweetness of the fruit is a shock to the senses. It tastes of summer. It tastes of peace. It tastes like a future that is finally close enough to touch. The simple act of sharing this small luxury washes away the lingering tension of the day. The night deepens around them. The tall pines stand like silent, ancient sentinels, guarding the sleeping men from the rest of the world. The shadows inside the tank stretch and blend until there is only a comforting, velvet blackness. The fear of tomorrow is gently, carefully set aside. There is no need to carry it right now. Tonight, they are safe in the forest. Tonight, there is only the sweet taste of peaches, the steady breathing of brothers, and the soft, rhythmic lullaby of the rain falling on the steel. You, too, can set your heavy burdens aside. The day is over. The road has been traveled. There is nothing left for you to carry into the dark. Wrap yourself in the quiet peace of your room. Let the rhythm of your breathing match the slow, steady drip of the rain in the pines. Rest now, dear listener. The shadows of the forest are not here to frighten you, they are here to hold you. Sleep deeply. Sleep gently. And let the quiet night carry you safely toward your own beautiful tomorrow. The river did not care about the falling of empires, it simply flowed, carrying the heavy mists of a new spring quietly toward the sea. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, draw a slow, deep breath, and let it out with a soft sigh. Sink deeply into the comforting embrace of your pillows. Let the rushing noise of your day fade into the background, and allow my voice to carry you to a place of profound, lingering stillness. Tonight, the long, grueling march across the continent has paused. We have arrived at the final, natural threshold. We are standing on the damp, muddy banks of the Oder River, in the gentle, hazy twilight just before the dawn. Imagine a morning so quiet that the loudest sound is the gentle lapping of the dark water against the reeds. A thick, white mist has rolled off the river during the night, blanketing the world in a soft, impenetrable cloud. The mist softens every edge. It muffles every sound. It turns the landscape into a dreamlike painting of pale grays, soft blues, and the muted, returning greens of the springtime earth. Hidden within this immense, silent fog, resting along the riverbanks for miles in either direction, is a vast, sleeping ocean of dark green steel. Thousands upon thousands of T-34s sit perfectly still, their engines cold, their long gun barrels pointing blindly into the white mist. They are covered in a fine layer of morning dew, the condensation beating on the heavy armor like a million tiny, glass pearls. The seasons have turned once more. The bitter, freezing agony of the winter is gone, replaced by the damp, earthy scent of returning life. The air smells of wet bark, blooming wildflowers, and the rich, dark soil of the riverbank. It is a surreal, heartbreaking juxtaposition. The earth is waking up, preparing to bloom, just as these weary men arrive at the very gates of the war's final, tragic chapter. Let us step lightly through the damp grass and climb onto the rear engine deck of one of these sleeping giants. The heavy iron hatch is open just a fraction, propped up to let the fresh spring air filter into the cramped, oil-stained belly of the machine. Inside, the commander, a man named Victor, sits in the quiet dark. Victor is a former carpenter. His hands are thick, heavily calloused, and permanently stained with dark diesel grease. He has ridden inside this iron box for thousands of miles. He has seen the deep snows, the suffocating mud, and the ruined cities. But this morning, Victor is not thinking about the miles behind him. He is listening to the river. Beside him, sleeping with his head resting awkwardly against the cold steel of the turret wall, is his young loader. Leviticus Lev is barely 20 years old. He is dreaming, his breathing slow and rhythmic, his face relaxed in the peaceful innocence of sleep. Victor watches the boy for a long time. He feels a deep, fatherly ache in his chest. They are so close to the end. The great, dark capital of the enemy lies just miles away, hidden somewhere beyond the mist on the other side of the water. Victor reaches into his deep canvas pocket and pulls out a small, slightly bruised apple. He had found it the day before, growing wild near an abandoned farmhouse. He uses his pocket knife to carefully slice it into small, even wedges. He eats one piece slowly, savoring the sudden, bright sweetness, a taste of life and sunlight in a world that has been gray for so long. He leaves the rest of the apple slices resting on a clean cloth near Lev's hand, a small, quiet gift for the boy to find when he finally opens his eyes. This is the monumental atmosphere of the river odor. It is not a loud, triumphant celebration. It is a quiet, heavy reflection. The men sitting in the mist know that the end of their long, terrible journey is just across the water. They can feel the massive weight of the history they are making, pressing down on their tired shoulders. It is a grand, sweeping tragedy, deeply moving in its immense scale and its quiet, individual heartbreaks. Standing here at the gates of Berlin, wrapped in the spring mists, you can truly feel the sheer, staggering magnitude of the past. It is an atmosphere that invites deep reflection and a desire to honor the monumental sacrifices of these quiet men. If you feel drawn to connect with this grand, tragic history, I warmly recommend exploring the WWII enthusiast items available on Amazon. Whether it is finding a piece of authentic physical memorabilia to hold in your hands, or experiencing the epic, visual storytelling of historical cinema like the movie Midway on Prime, these resources help build a profound bridge to the past. It is a wonderful way to honor the staggering reality of their journey and keep their memories vividly alive. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet sanctuary of the T-34, where the early morning is just beginning to unfold. The mist outside the tank begins to change. The deep, charcoal gray of the night slowly softens into a pale, pearlescent lavender. The sun is preparing to rise, though it is still entirely hidden behind the thick curtain of fog. Somewhere in the tall reeds along the riverbank, a single, tiny bird begins to sing. It is a sweet, trilling melody that echoes beautifully across the water, completely ignorant of the vast army of men and machines holding their breath around it. Victor leans his head back and closes his eyes, letting the sweet birdsong wash over him. He reaches into his tunic and pulls out a small, tattered notebook. The pages are worn soft as cloth, filled with the cramped, careful handwriting of a man who writes only in the deepest hours of the night. He finds his pencil and rests the notebook against his knee. He is writing to his wife, far away in a village that has finally begun to rebuild. "My dearest Anya," he writes, the pencil whispering softly in the dim light. "We have reached a great river. The water is dark and quiet, and the morning fog is so thick I cannot see the other side. They tell us that the final city is just beyond it. I am sitting here listening to a bird sing in the reeds, and it sounds exactly like the swallows that used to nest in our barn." He pauses, taking a slow, deep breath. The scent of the blooming wildflowers drifts into the tank, carrying the undeniable promise of a world that will eventually heal. "I am so tired, my love," he continues, his hand trembling just slightly. "My bones ache with the damp, and my heart is heavy with the things we have seen. But the spring is here. I can feel the warmth returning to the earth. I look at my crew, at these young boys sleeping in the dark, and I pray that this river is the last river we will ever have to cross. I dream of the day I can walk through our front gate and lay my hands on wood and soil instead of this cold iron. Wait for me, Anya. The mist is lifting. I am coming home." He folds the letter carefully, pressing the crease flat with his thick thumb, and tucks it safely back over his heart. Beside him, young Lev stirs. The boy slowly opens his eyes, blinking away the sleep. He looks confused for a moment, disoriented by the dark metal walls, before his gaze falls upon the small, neatly sliced pieces of apple resting on the cloth. A slow, soft smile spreads across the boy's face. He looks up at Victor. No words are spoken. Lev simply takes a piece of the fruit, taking a bite, his eyes reflecting a deep, silent gratitude for the gentle care of his commander. This is the true victory of the war. It is not found in the crushing of an empire or the taking of a capital city. The true victory is that after thousands of miles of mud, ice, and fire, these men have not lost their capacity for profound, quiet kindness. They have carried their humanity intact through the very depths of the dark, shielding it within the iron walls of their machines. The light outside begins to brighten, turning the thick mist from lavender to a brilliant, glowing white. The sun is finally burning through, casting warm, golden rays across the surface of the odor. The dew on the armor begins to evaporate, rising like tiny ghosts into the spring air. Far down the riverbank, the deep, mechanical groan of a starter motor echoes through the morning. An engine catches, roaring to life with a heavy, rhythmic thrum. Then another starts. And another. The sound rolls down the line, a low, powerful vibration that shakes the damp earth. The sleeping giants are waking up for the final push. Victor reaches out and places his hand gently on the cold steel of the turret ring. He takes one last, long look at the quiet river, the swaying reeds, and the beautiful, gentle mist. He takes a deep breath, filling his lungs with the scent of the spring, and reaches for the starter. But you, dear listener, do not need to cross the river. You do not need to move forward into the light of the day. Your journey for tonight is perfectly complete. The mists are wrapping securely around your own room, keeping the demands of the world far at bay. The heavy iron machines are rolling away, leaving you in a space of absolute, undisturbed peace. You can let go of your thoughts now. You can let the gentle hum of the fading engines carry you down into the deepest, softest layers of sleep. Rest your tired mind. Allow the sweet scent of the spring morning to linger in your dreams. The long night has passed, the river is quiet, and you are perfectly safe. Sleep deeply, sleep well, and let the gentle mists hold you softly until you are ready to wake. The loudest sound a man can ever hear is the sudden, deafening arrival of absolute peace. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, close your eyes. Let out a long, slow breath, and feel the heavy, accumulated tension of the day simply melt away from your shoulders. Sink deeply into the comforting softness of your bed. You are perfectly safe here. The walls of your room are quiet, the doors are locked, and the hurried rushing of the world has finally come to a halt. Tonight, we are joining the great iron machines as they, too, come to their final halt. We are traveling to the very end of the road. Imagine a shattered city in the late days of spring. The streets are choked with the fallen brick and pale, crushed stone of ruined buildings. But nature is quietly, gently trying to reclaim the earth. The sky above the broken rooftops is a brilliant, piercing blue, and the warm spring sun filters down through the haze, illuminating millions of tiny dust motes dancing lazily in the air. Rolling slowly, exhausted through this quiet destruction, is a Sherman tank. The machine looks ancient. Its dark olive paint is deeply scarred, covered in a thick layer of pale, powdery plaster dust. It moves with a slow, heavy reluctance, its tracks squeaking and groaning against the cobblestones, as if the iron itself is simply too tired to take another step. Inside the dim, cramped belly of the tank, the air is thick and heavy. It smells of hot oil, stale sweat, and the sharp, metallic tang of gunpowder. Here, standing in the shadows of the turret, is the loader. His name is Daniel. He is a boy from a quiet, deeply green farming town in the American Midwest, but the war has carved deep, permanent lines around his eyes. His canvas uniform is stiff with grease. His hands are blackened with soot. Daniel is holding a heavy, brass artillery shell. He cradles it in his arms with a profound, terrifying familiarity. The brass is cool and smooth against his calloused palms. He has loaded this gun so many times, in so many different countries, in the freezing snow and the baking desert heat, that the movement has become woven into his very bones. It is a muscle memory that has entirely replaced his youth. Up in the commander's cupola, looking through the narrow glass periscopes, is Elias. Elias is older, a quiet man who has carried the impossible burden of keeping his 4 boys alive across a burning continent. His shoulders are stooped. His eyes ache from staring into the shadows for thousands of miles. The tension inside the cabin is incredibly high, a taut, vibrating wire. They all know the rumors. They all know the end is just days, perhaps only hours, away. And that knowledge makes the fear so much sharper. No one wants to be the last man to fall. No one wants to lose their life in the final, tragic moments of a dying storm. Suddenly, the tank rolls to a halt. Elias has seen something in the ruins ahead. A final obstacle. A final, desperate remnant of the conflict. He does not shout. He does not yell. He simply lets out a long, heavy sigh, a sound of profound sorrow that this must happen one last time. He speaks the order softly into the intercom. Daniel moves on pure, unthinking instinct. He pivots in the cramped space, lifting the heavy brass casing. He slides it smoothly into the open breech of the cannon. The massive steel block slams upward, sealing the chamber shut with a heavy, echoing clack. The gunner, a soft-spoken boy named Samuel, presses his forehead against the padded sight. He pulls the trigger. The great machine rocks backward on its suspension, a violent, sudden lurch like a boat hitting a deep wave. A deafening roar fills the cabin, followed instantly by the thick, choking smell of sulfur and burnt cordite. The breech opens, and the empty brass casing is forcefully ejected. It clatters onto the steel floor plates, spinning for a moment with a bright, ringing sound, before finally rolling to a stop against Daniel's heavy leather boot. Instantly, Daniel turns back to the ammunition rack. His blackened hands reach out blindly in the dim light, his muscles tight, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wraps his fingers around the cold brass of the next shell. He prepares to pull it free, preparing to repeat the endless cycle of the war. But then, a heavy hand falls upon his shoulder. It is Elias. The commander has climbed down from his seat. His grip on Daniel's shoulder is firm and incredibly warm. "No more, Danny," Elias whispers, his voice trembling in the smoky dark. "Hold. It's over." A crackling, static-filled voice is coming over the radio headsets. White flags have been seen. Orders are being passed down the line. The guns are to be silenced. The reality of these final, chaotic moments is often difficult to comprehend. The sudden, jarring transition from the harshness of survival to the surreal quiet of peace was a deeply raw, deeply human experience. The true atmosphere of those final days, the dust, the exhaustion, the unfiltered emotion on the faces of the crews, is something that words can only gently outline. Because I want you to truly understand the unvarnished reality of what these boys lived through, I have put together a special collection on Gumroad. It contains unseen, raw imagery and unedited videos of the war's conclusion, showing the uncensored truth of the final days that are simply too restricted to share on this platform. It is a deeply moving way to look back and honor their ultimate relief. Please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the heavy, smoke-filled silence of the turret. Daniel freezes. His hand is still resting on the brass shell in the rack. He stares at the cold metal, his mind struggling to process the gentle words his commander just spoke. No more. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Daniel pulls his hand away from the ammunition. He looks down at his empty, soot-stained fingers. They are trembling violently. He is not afraid. The trembling is the sudden, shocking absence of purpose. The heavy, protective armor of adrenaline is draining out of his body all at once, leaving a hollow, echoing space inside his chest. He slowly sinks down onto a wooden ammunition crate. He looks down at the floor plates. There, resting against his boot, is the empty brass casing. the very last shell. It is still radiating a gentle warmth from the fire. Daniel reaches down and picks it up. He holds the warm, empty cylinder in his lap, rubbing his thumb over the smooth, blackened metal. He will never have to load this gun again. Across the cramped space, Samuel pushes himself away from the gun sights. He pulls off his heavy, padded leather helmet, letting it drop to the floor. His hair is matted flat with sweat. He looks over at Daniel, and then he looks up at Elias. There is no cheering. There is no grand, cinematic celebration. The weight of what they have survived is simply too heavy for joy. Instead, Samuel reaches deep into the breast pocket of his uniform. He pulls out a small, incredibly worn photograph. It is a picture of a woman standing on a porch, holding a baby in a white dress. The photograph is creased, stained with oil, and the edges are frayed from being touched 1,000 times in the dark. Samuel does not say a word. He just holds the picture in his trembling hands, staring at the faces of his family, and a single, silent tear escapes his eye. It cuts a clean, pale track through the thick plaster dust on his cheek, falling gently onto his lap. Elias watches his boys. He feels a profound, overwhelming wave of love and relief wash over him. He reaches up and grabs the heavy iron handles of the commander's hatch. With a loud creak, he pushes the thick metal roof open, throwing it back on its hinges. The brilliant, warm light of the May afternoon comes pouring down into the dark, smoky cabin. It falls over Daniel, sitting quietly with the empty casing. It falls over Samuel, holding his fragile photograph. It is a beautiful, blinding light. Elias climbs up and sits on the edge of the open hatch. He pulls off his own helmet and lets the gentle spring breeze wash over his face. The air filtering into the tank no longer smells entirely of smoke and iron. Carried on the wind is the faint, resilient, and undeniably sweet scent of green trees growing somewhere beyond the ruins. "Cut the engine," Elias whispers down into the dark. The driver pulls the lever. The massive diesel beast, which has roared and vibrated and carried them across an ocean and a continent, shudders one final time. It lets out a deep, mechanical sigh, and then falls perfectly, permanently silent. The quiet that rushes into the tank is heavier than the armor plating itself. It is a silence so deep and profound it almost rings in the ears. It is the silence of a world that has finally, mercifully stopped breaking. Inside the cabin, Daniel rests his head against the cold steel wall. He closes his eyes. He listens to the quiet. He realizes that for the first time in years, he does not have to listen for the sound of danger. He does not have to brace himself for the next movement. The metal around him is no longer a weapon, it is just a quiet, empty room, warming in the afternoon sun. The long, terrible journey is over. The final shell has been spent. You, too, have reached the end of your long day. You have carried your own burdens, you have navigated your own obstacles, and now, it is time to cut the engine. Let the heavy momentum of your thoughts slow down, and finally glide to a peaceful halt. There are no more tasks required of you tonight. The brass is cool. The iron is quiet. The soft, gentle light of peace has filled your room. Let your breathing become slow, deep, and steady, matching the profound stillness of the resting world. Rest your tired mind, dear listener. The shadows have faded, and you are entirely safe. Let the quiet darkness embrace you. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and know that tomorrow belongs only to the living. When the great iron hearts finally stopped beating, the men inside had to learn how to breathe all over again. Welcome back, dear listener. Please, let your eyes drift gently closed. Let out a long, slow breath, and feel the heavy, accumulated tension of the day simply melt away from your shoulders, sinking deep into the mattress beneath you. You are perfectly safe here. The walls of your room are quiet, the doors are locked, and the hurried rushing of the world has finally come to a halt. Tonight, we are joining the crews of the great machines as they, too, come to their final, permanent halt. We have reached the moment the entire world prayed for. We have reached the silence of the engines. Imagine a small, weathered village square in the heart of Europe. The afternoon sun is casting long, golden shadows across the ancient cobblestones. There are no grand parades here. There is no confetti falling from the sky, no marching bands, and no crowds cheering in the streets. There is only a single, dust-covered Sherman tank, sitting heavily in the center of the square, its armor battered and scarred from thousands of miles of travel. Inside the dim, cramped belly of the tank, the radio has just crackled with a final, surreal message. The words were short. The orders were clear. The fighting is over. In the driver's seat sits a young man named Elias. He is staring through his narrow glass periscope at a stone fountain in the center of the square. His hands are still gripping the heavy steering levers. His knuckles are white. He has held onto those levers through the baking deserts, through the terrifying hedgerows, and through the freezing winter snows. They have become an extension of his own body. Above him, the commander, an older, soft-spoken man named Arthur, reaches out and gently taps Elias on the shoulder. "Cut it, Eli," Arthur whispers. His voice is trembling, barely a breath in the warm, well-scented air of the cabin. "Cut the engine. We're done." Elias slowly pulls his hands away from the levers. He reaches down, his fingers shaking, and turns the cutoff switch. The massive diesel beast, which has roared and vibrated and carried them across an ocean and a continent, shudders one final time. It lets out a deep, mechanical sigh, and then it falls perfectly, permanently silent. The quiet that rushes into the tank is heavier than the armor plating itself. It is a silence so deep, so profound, and so sudden that it almost rings in the ears. It is the deafening silence of a world that has finally, mercifully stopped breaking. Elias pushes open his heavy iron hatch. He pulls himself up and out of the machine, climbing down the sloped front armor, his heavy boots making a soft, scraping sound against the metal. He steps down onto the cobblestones. The earth beneath his feet is perfectly still. There are no vibrations. There are no distant rumbles of thunder on the horizon. He walks over to the edge of the stone fountain and sits down. He takes off his heavy, padded canvas helmet, letting it drop to the ground beside him. The spring breeze catches his hair. For the very first time in years, the air he breathes does not smell of burnt cordite, hot brass, or diesel exhaust. It smells of damp stone, old moss, and the sweet, green scent of the surrounding forest. Elias looks down at his hands. They are covered in thick, black grease and pale dust. They are shaking violently. He is not afraid. The trembling is the sudden, shocking absence of fear. The heavy, protective armor of adrenaline is draining out of his body all at once, leaving a hollow, echoing space inside his chest. He realizes, with a profound and staggering clarity, that he is going to live. He is going to see his 22nd birthday. He is going to see the quiet river behind his childhood home in Oregon again. Arthur walks over and sits quietly beside him on the edge of the fountain. He doesn't offer a celebratory cheer. The weight of what they have survived is simply too heavy for joy. He just reaches out and rests his warm, calloused hand firmly on the back of Elias's neck. A grounding touch. A silent confirmation that it is truly over. Across the continent, on the edge of a vast, rolling field, a column of T-34s has also come to a halt. The great green machines sit quietly in the tall grass, their long gun barrels pointed blindly toward a horizon that is finally at peace. The heavy hatches are thrown open. A driver named Pyotr, a boy who left his family's farm what feels like a lifetime ago, climbs down from his machine. He does not cheer with the other men further down the line. He walks a few paces away from the idling column, away from the smell of the iron, and slowly sinks to his knees in the soft, spring grass. He doesn't kiss the earth. He simply reaches out and runs his filthy, soot-stained fingers through the green blades. He feels the damp earth beneath his fingernails. For years, the ground was only ever a tactical advantage, a place to hide, or a terrible obstacle of mud and ice. But today, as he kneels in the silence, it has become something miraculous again. It is just grass. It is just soil. It is the earth, healing itself. Pyotr's commander, a broad-shouldered man named Vasily, kneels down in the grass beside him. Vasily pulls a small, incredibly worn photograph from his breast pocket. It is a picture of his wife, her edges frayed and soft from being touched 1,000 times in the dark. Vasily holds the picture in his large, trembling hands. He stares at her face, and then, a single, silent tear escapes his eye. It cuts a clean, pale track through the thick dust and engine soot on his cheek, falling gently onto his lap. He doesn't wipe it away. Another tear falls, and then another. For the first time in 4 years, the commander allows himself to weep. It is not a cry of sorrow, but the profound, overwhelming release of a breath he has been holding since the day he left his home. "I am coming back," Vasily whispers to the photograph, his voice catching in his throat. The engines are quiet. "I am coming back." This is the true, untold story of victory. We often see the grainy newsreels of the massive crowds cheering in the grand capitals of the world, the confetti falling like snow, the dancing in the streets. But for the men who lived inside the steel, the end of the war was deeply private, surreal, and hidden away in quiet fields and empty village squares. It was a profoundly intimate silence, tucked away in the shadows of history. There are so many layers of this era that remain hidden from the bright lights of the history books. So many quiet moments, secret operations, and untold realities that shaped the very world we live in today, existing entirely in the shadows. If you find yourself drawn to these hidden truths, and if you want to explore the profound, unspoken histories of this time, I have something special I would love to share with you. I send out a gentle, weekly email newsletter, and when you join, I will send you a free ebook titled The Shadow War: 5 Top Secret Operations That Shaped World War II. It is a deeply respectful journey into the forgotten facts, the hidden heroes, and the espionage that quietly turned the tide of the world. It is a gift, a way for us to uncover the silent stories together. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Now, let us return to the quiet village square, where the evening is gently beginning to fall. The sun dips below the rooftops of the old stone houses, casting the square into a soft, cool twilight. The sky turns beautiful shades of bruised purple, soft pink, and deep indigo. The Sherman tank, which used to be the center of their entire universe, the machine that dictated their every waking moment, now just sits there in the shadows. Without the roaring of its engine, without the terrifying purpose of its gun, it suddenly looks so ordinary. It just looks like a tired, heavy piece of farm equipment, cooling in the evening air. As the immense iron block loses its heat, it makes soft, rhythmic ticking and pinging sounds. It sounds as though the machine itself is finally settling down to sleep, sighing after a long, impossible journey. Elias pulls a small, worn notebook from his canvas jacket. He finds his stub of a pencil and rests the paper against his knee. He is writing a letter to his mother, but the words are hard to find. "Mom," he writes, his handwriting soft and slow in the fading light. "The war ended today. It is so quiet here in this little town. I am sitting by a fountain, and I don't know what to do with my hands. I keep listening for the thunder, I keep waiting for the ground to shake, but there are only crickets singing in the grass. It feels like a dream. The armor is cold. The guns are empty. I am bringing myself back to you." He folds the letter carefully, sealing his survival inside the paper, and tucks it over his heart. The crew of the Sherman does not sleep inside the tank tonight. There is no need for the thick steel walls to protect them. They unroll their canvas blankets right there on the warm cobblestones, beneath the open sky. Thousands of miles away, in the quiet meadow, Pyotr and Vasily lay their heavy winter coats out in the tall grass. They lie on their backs, their hands tucked behind their heads, staring up at the darkening sky. The stars begin to appear, one by one, brilliant and icy and clear. For years, these men only ever looked at the night sky to navigate, or to anxiously search for the shadows of enemy planes. The sky was a map, or it was a threat. But tonight, for the first time in 1,000 nights, they are just looking at the stars because they are beautiful. There is no watch to set tonight. There is no need for someone to stand in the turret with heavy, tired eyes, peering into the dark. They can all sleep. They can close their eyes and let the night take them, knowing with absolute, wonderful certainty that the morning will come, and it will be peaceful. The survivor's guilt, the heavy memories of the boys who drove with them but will not return, will be a burden they carry for the rest of their lives. But tonight, that burden is softened by the gentle, sweeping grace of the silence. They have survived. They have carried the weight of the world, and now they have set it down. You, too, can set your heavy burdens aside. The day is completely over. The long, winding road you have traveled today has come to a peaceful halt. There is absolutely nothing left for you to carry into the dark. Wrap yourself in the quiet peace of your room. Let your breathing become slow, deep, and steady, matching the profound stillness of the resting world outside your window. The engines of your own mind can finally power down. Let the humming of your thoughts fade away into a quiet, comforting hum, and then into nothing at all. Rest now, dear listener. The great machines are asleep. The shadows have faded, and the world is entirely safe. Let the quiet darkness embrace you. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and let the profound peace of the silenced engines hold you safely until the dawn. Iron does not weep for the past, it simply yields to the patient, gentle embrace of the earth. Welcome back, dear listener, for one final time. Please, let your eyes drift softly closed. Take a long, deep breath in, filling your lungs with the quiet air of your room, and as you exhale, let go of every remaining ounce of tension you are holding. Let your shoulders sink heavily into your mattress. Unclench your hands. The long, impossible journey across the continents is over. The mud has dried, the snows have melted, and the deafening roar of the great engines has faded into a distant, echoing memory. Tonight, we are not looking at the fire of the conflict. We are looking at the quiet, profound peace that follows long after the world has moved on. Imagine a quiet, rolling field in the countryside, bathed in the soft, golden light of late afternoon. Decades have passed since the tracks of an army churned this soil. The earth has healed. The grass is tall, green, and swaying gently in the summer breeze. And there, sitting alone in the center of the meadow, half swallowed by the tall grass and wild daisies, is a Sherman tank. It is no longer the fearsome, dark olive machine of its youth. Time, rain, and the gentle turning of the seasons have transformed it. The thick armor plating is blanketed in a rich, textured coat of rust, painting the steel in warm, beautiful shades of burnt orange, deep umber, and soft red. It looks like the colors of an autumn forest, permanently etched into the metal. Wild ivy has crept up the sides of the road wheels, weaving its delicate green tendrils through the heavy iron spokes. A thick carpet of velvet soft moss grows along the damp edges of the front slope. And up high, inside the dark, empty opening of the gun barrel, a family of small songbirds has built a nest of twigs and dried grass. The machine that was built for destruction has been gently, beautifully reclaimed by life. It is no longer a weapon of war. It is a monument of profound, quiet resting. A gentle rain begins to fall, a soft, whispering drizzle that patters lightly against the rusted hull. The water deepens the colors of the oxidized steel, making it glow softly in the gray light. An old man walks slowly through the tall wet grass, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. His steps are careful and deliberate. He wears a faded cardigan, and his silver hair is tucked beneath a simple flat cap. He walks right up to the side of the rusted Sherman, not minding the rain that dampens his shoulders. This is William. Decades ago, he was a boy sitting in the bow of a machine just like this one, terrified in the shadows of the Reichswald, writing letters to his father by the dim red glow of a flashlight. William reaches out with a hand that is spotted with age and trembling slightly. He lays his bare palm flat against the cold, wet, rusted steel. He does not see a decaying machine. He does not see the rust or the ivy. When he closes his eyes, he is 20 years old again. He smells the sweet pipe tobacco that his commander, James, used to smoke in the turret. He hears the soft, rhythmic humming of his driver, David, trying to stay awake on the long night marches. He feels the comforting, solid weight of his friend's shoulder pressed against his own in the terrifying dark. A single tear slips from beneath his closed eyelids, cutting a path through the gentle wrinkles of his cheek. It is not a tear of pain, or even of sorrow. It is a tear of profound, overwhelming love. It is the heavy, beautiful burden of being the one left behind to remember. William stands there in the soft rain, his hand pressed to the iron, communicating silently with the ghosts of his youth. He whispers a quiet thank you to the steel that brought him home, and a gentle blessing for the boys who never left the fields. Thousands of miles away, in a quiet village square in Eastern Europe, a similar communion is taking place. Here, a T-34 sits elevated on a concrete pedestal. It has been painted and repainted over the years, a pristine monument to the great patriotic struggle. But to the old man sitting on the wooden bench beneath it, the fresh paint means nothing. His name is Leviticus. He is wrapped in a heavy winter coat, tossing breadcrumbs to a flock of gentle pigeons gathering at his feet. He looks up at the massive, sloped armor of the tank. He remembers how the steel felt when it was freezing, when the winter was so cruel it felt as though it would shatter their very bones. He remembers the taste of the warm water shared from a single, battered tin cup, and the smell of the tiny scrap of tea his friend Yuri saved for months. People walk past the monument every day, hurrying to work, carrying groceries, living their bright, modern lives. They look up at the machine and they see history. They see a symbol of national victory. But Lev knows the truth. He knows what we must all ultimately realize when we ask the question, which tank won the war? Was it the reliable, comfortable Sherman, or the white-tracked, heavily sloped T-34? The answer, whispered in the quiet grass and the falling rain, is that the machines won absolutely nothing. The tanks were just iron, diesel, and wire. They were blind, unfeeling things. They were steel coffins and they were metal cradles, but they possessed no courage. They had no bravery. The war was won by the fragile, terrified, beautiful human hearts beating inside of them. It was won by the boys who shared their blankets in the freezing snow. It was won by the men who wrote gentle, protective lies to their mothers in the dark. It was won by the commanders who gave away their last piece of bread, and the drivers who pushed their aching bodies far past the limits of human endurance. The story of the armor is really just the story of the men who loved each other enough to endure the unimaginable. These human sacrifices, these quiet moments of everyday heroism, are so incredibly fragile. The rust will eventually consume the iron of the tanks, and time will eventually claim the men who drove them. If we do not actively preserve these memories, if we do not speak their names and tell their stories in the quiet hours of the night, they will fade away into the mists of the past. Gathering these deeply personal stories, reading the faded letters, and doing the massive, ongoing research required to keep these human memories alive is a labor of profound devotion. It is a vital effort to ensure that the quiet courage of these crews is never forgotten. If you feel a deep connection to these stories, and if you believe in the importance of remembering these fragile human sacrifices, I would be incredibly grateful if you might consider leaving a small tip in my Ko-Fi tip jar. Even a gesture as small as $1 helps support the painstaking research needed to preserve this history, and it means the world to me. But please, to keep yourself safe, only use the secure link I've placed in the description below. If you try to search for this on the internet, the top results are unfortunately often fake websites designed to scam you, and I want to make sure you are protected. Let us return to the quiet, rolling meadow, where the soft rain has finally stopped falling. The clouds begin to part, and the last, golden rays of the evening sun break through, illuminating the rusted Sherman in a warm, beautiful light. The raindrops clinging to the moss and the ivy catch the light, sparkling like tiny, scattered diamonds across the armor. William slowly pulls his hand away from the steel. He takes a long, slow breath of the clean, washed air. He reaches into the pocket of his cardigan and pulls out a single, pale blue wildflower he picked by the side of the road. With a trembling hand, he gently places the delicate flower onto the rusted tracks of the machine. It is a tiny, perfect splash of vibrant life against the decaying iron. A fragile reminder that life always, eventually, triumphs over destruction. William turns and walks slowly back across the meadow, his cane sinking softly into the damp earth. He is going home to a warm house, a quiet room, and a peaceful night's rest. He carries his memories with him, not as a heavy burden of terror, but as a deep, abiding testament to the love of his friends. The great iron machines have finally found their rest. The roaring of the guns has been replaced by the singing of the birds. The heavy, trembling earth has settled into a deep, permanent stillness. The shadows of the past have softened, fading into the gentle twilight of remembrance. You, too, can now let go of everything you are holding. The story is complete. The long journey through the history of the steel and the heart has gently coasted to a halt. There is nothing left to fear in the dark. The world outside your window is peaceful and quiet. The sacrifices of the past have ensured the safety of your present, allowing you to lie in your warm bed, surrounded by comfort and calm. Let the image of the rusted tank, sleeping peacefully in the tall summer grass, be the final thing you see in your mind's eye. Let the gentle dripping of the rain and the soft wind in the meadow be your lullaby. The engines are forever silent. The men are at peace. And you are perfectly safe. Rest your tired mind, dear listener. Sink into the deep, welcoming embrace of the night. Sleep deeply, sleep gently, and let the quiet, beautiful peace of the resting world hold you safely until the morning light.